Chapter 800. In the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Chu Xiu had been waiting there for a long time. According to Lu Yu's information, Zhong Ping was already lurking in the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Chu Xiu waited in the Flourishing Moon restaurant for about 2 hours before Yuan Tianfang arrived. He deliberately left Chu Xiu hanging. "Chu Xiu boy, what do you want to say by asking I to come here? Is there anything that can't be said in the Zhenwu Hall?" Yuan Tianfang sat opposite Chu Xiu with a look of contempt. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Senior Yuan, it's true that I killed your disciple, but it was Xing Situ who wanted to kill me first. If someone wants to kill me, of course I'll kill them. I didn't do anything wrong in that feud." Yuan Tianfang sneered, "You Chu Xiu didn't do anything wrong, but Xing Situ was my disciple. His disciple was killed and his master came to take revenge. That's not wrong either, is it?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Revenge breeds revenge. When will it ever end? My position in the Hidden Devil clan has been established. Unless you want to completely fall out with the Hidden Devil clan, you can't kill me." Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Position? Chu Xiu, you're so naive. Do you really think your position is invulnerable? Even if Wei Shuya came, he wouldn't dare say that." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Then Senior Yuan, you really don't want to reconcile?" Yuan Tianfang said coldly, "I've said it before. As long as you, Chu Xiu, cripple your own martial arts, then I won't pursue it. Otherwise there's nothing to talk about." Just as the atmosphere between the two of them was at daggers drawn, Zhong Ping, who was disguised as a waiter, walked in. He lowered his head and placed the wine and dishes in front of Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang. Zhong Ping's disguise was quite good. It was unknown what method he used, but he managed to seal all of his power. Even Chu Xiu did not notice the slightest leakage of gang qi. However, his disguise was very ridiculous in the eyes of Chu Xiu, who was meticulous, and Yuan Tianfang, who was an old monster in Jianghu. He could hide his strength, but he could not hide his killing intent. He could not hide the habits he had developed over the years of practicing martial arts. Not to mention Chu Xiu and Yuan Tianfang, even Lu Yu could see it. At this moment, Zhong Ping was also very nervous, and his hands were even trembling slightly. To be honest, he didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to tag along. His target was not Yuan Tianfang but Chu Xiu. But if he gave up this opportunity, he didn't know when he would have to wait. Therefore he could only make a bet. He bet that Chu Xiu would eat something first, and that he would attack immediately after he was poisoned. Moreover, he also heard that Yuan Tianfang and Chu Xiu had always been at odds. The two sides had a grudge against each other for killing their disciples. If he took action, would Yuan Tianfang hit him when he was down? With this purpose, Zhong Ping stared at Chu Xiu and watched Chu Xiu pick up the cup. But before Chu Xiu could drink it, Yuan Tianfang suddenly threw the wine cup, swept away all the wine and dishes on the table and shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu, you actually want to kill me? It's fine if you use the same method to deal with Fang Jinwu, but you dare to use it against I. Do you really think I dare not kill you?" Yuan Tianfang moved his hand and directly grabbed Zhong Ping's neck. He didn't give Zhong Ping a chance to speak at all. He directly strangled him and threw him to the side. Monstrous devil qi bloomed from his hand, directly forming a huge devil qi vortex in mid-air. The giant hand stretched out from it, sealed the space and went straight for Chu Xiu. The moment the giant hand of devil qi appeared, the top floor of the entire Flourishing Moon restaurant suddenly exploded, causing the people downstairs and on the long street to be shocked. Even the people in the palace stared at the two of them. Yuan Tianfang was really bold to the extreme and also extremely angry to the extreme. He completely ignored the rules and actually made a move in the city. The lethality of an expert in the true fire refining realm was too great. Therefore, at this level, unless it was a battle to exterminate the opponent's family, both sides would try to avoid fierce battles in the city as much as possible. With their strength, it was not a problem to destroy a huge city in a battle. Chu Xiu sat still. Traces of bloodlines flew around his body, and those bloodlines finally turned into a human-shaped blood shadow. Some were holding a sword, some were holding a Buddhist seal, and some were flashing with blood-colored lightning. The blood shadows flew all over the sky and directly strangled the giant devil qi hand. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This was the first time he had used the blood shadow great technique, and the effect was unexpectedly good. Although this was just a casual attack from Yuan Tianfang, the opponent was, after all, an existence in the true fire refining realm. It was not easy for Chu Xiu to block it without hurting himself. "Lu Jiang," he said proudly in Chu Xiu's mind, "how about it? My blood shadow great technique is good, right? It's a pity that I only collected the blood of a few experts in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. If you can collect 70 or 80, You can push this technique to the peak. Chu Xiu did not respond to Lu Jianghe's boasting. Chu Xiu had just used this technique and he had actually discovered its biggest weakness. It was not in the technique itself but in its potential. The key point of the blood shadow great technique was not to condense these blood shadows, but to find the blood of those powerhouses and nourish the martial art's true meaning in it. But how many powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm were there? That was something that could be counted on two hands. 70 or 80, Chu Xiu might not be able to live for those years. Moreover, Chu Xiu was in the real pellet state or the true fire refining realm. The blood shadow great technique was very useful. However, once Chu Xiu broke through to the heaven and earth mysterious realm, would the blood shadow great technique that only had the martial art's true meaning of the powerhouses in the heaven and earth mysterious realm be useful? It would probably be vulnerable. Therefore, the biggest shortcoming of this technique was that its growth was limited. It should be said that this technique had no potential at all. That was also Lu Jianghe's unique trait. The techniques he created with the demonic blood technique were almost always the kind of techniques that were powerful in the same realm, but had low growth potential. At this time, Yuan Tianfang also looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised expression. Blood God demonic technique. You actually know the blood God demonic technique. In fact, Yuan Tianfang also knew this cultivation method, but what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. What he taught Duan Zhuo was this incomplete technique. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to know the complete version of the blood God demonic technique. However, Yuan Tianfang was not surprised for too long. He said coldly in an instant, "So what if you know the blood God demonic technique? Even if you have the inheritance of Patriarch Dugu, I will not spare you today." Chu Xiu hurriedly said, "Senior Yuan, there must be a misunderstanding. I used the same technique twice and it was still so obvious. Why would I do such a stupid thing? Take a closer look at the person who died in your hands." Yuan Tianfang was stunned. He turned around to look at Zhong Ping's corpse. With a wave of his hand, Gang Qi directly shattered the disguise on Zhong Ping's body, revealing the appearance of a monk. It's a monk from the Great Light Temple? Even though Zhong Ping was already dead, there were still some traces of cultivation techniques left on his body. Yuan Tianfang had interacted with the monks from the Great Light Temple in his early years, so he could easily recognize them. However, Yuan Tianfang didn't understand why the monks from the Great Light Temple wanted to kill him. Moreover, they used such a despicable method. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, "Senior Yuan, I'm sorry. The monks from the Great Light Temple must have come for me. I've always had enmity with the monks from the Great Light Temple. It's normal for them to want to kill me. Senior Yuan, you've been implicated by me this time." Yuan Tianfang frowned and looked around. With a cold snort, he turned around and left. Chu Xiu had already lowered himself so much. Moreover, there were so many people watching. At this time, it was not good for Yuan Tianfang to continue making a move. That would be too blatant. He also somewhat regretted his hesitation just now. If he had continued to make a move just now and pretended not to know who the person who poisoned him was, then even if he killed Chu Xiu on the spot, he would still be able to answer to the hidden devil lineage. It was just a misunderstanding. Couldn't it be a manslaughter? Could it be that Wei Shia would make him pay with his life? However, now that he had made a move, he had already demolished the entire top floor of the Flourishing Moon restaurant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he no longer had a chance to continue making a move. After Yuan Tianfang was released, the smile on Chu Xiu's face disappeared. He walked downstairs and said to the shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant, "Later, I'll go to the Jinwu Hall to get the money. Consider it compensation for your losses." The shopkeeper of the Flourishing Moon restaurant hurriedly wanted to say no. He did not dare to go to a place like the Jinwu Hall to get the money. However, before he could say anything, Chu Xiu had already disappeared. In the alley next to the Flourishing Moon restaurant, Lu Yu had long been waiting there. Chu Xiu said to Lu Yu in a deep voice, "Use the fastest speed to spread this news to the Northern Yen Martial Arts Circle. This should not be difficult for your wind-sweeping tower. Moreover, the focus of the publicity is not the conflict between Yuan Tianfang and me, but the fact that he killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple." Lu Yu nodded in understanding. He did not ask much and went straight to deal with this matter. Lu Yu was considered very tactful. He knew what to ask and what not to ask. Now that such a big thing had happened, it was already big news. However, Lu Yu's intuition told him that Chu Xiu should still make a move. In just 2 days, this news had already spread throughout the entire Northern Yen Martial Arts Circle. In fact, it was just the death of a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Even if the other party was from the Great Light Temple, it would not attract the attention of others. However, the selling point of this news was not Zhong Ping, but Yuan Tianfang. This old devil had harmed the Eastern Qi martial arts circle and the Western Chu martial arts circle in the past. He seemed to have a grudge against Taoist priests, and almost all the people he killed were Taoist priests. After so many years of not appearing in the martial arts circle, this old devil had now come to the Northern Yen martial arts circle. Instead of killing Taoist priests, he killed monks. This caused the martial arts forces in the Northern Yen martial arts circle to feel insecure. Compared to Chu Xiu, they were obviously more afraid of Yuan Tianfang. Chu Xiu always had a purpose in everything he did. Surrender or die, at least there was a choice. However, when it was this old devil, he killed completely according to his mood. Chapter 801. Zhong Ping's corpse was sent back to the Great Light Temple. Liu had sent someone to send it back. Su Yan looked at Zhong Ping's corpse expressionlessly. In the end, he let out a deep sigh. Zhong Ping was a disciple of the Vajrayard, and he was also the disciple he thought the most highly of. Perhaps it was because of his background, but Zhong Ping was more hardworking than ordinary disciples. This was because he knew that only the Great Light Temple was his way out. Without the Great Light Temple, he would return to the Feng family's environment of scheming and scheming. When news of the Feng family's annihilation spread, it was Su Yan who personally persuaded him to temporarily let go of these grudges. At the moment, the relationship between the orthodox and demonic paths was sensitive. The Great Light Temple could not possibly fight to the death with Chu Xiu because of Zhong Ping's personal grudges. At that time, Zhong Ping had agreed. Su Yan thought that he had already let go of everything. After all, the Feng family did not treat Zhong Ping very well. In the end, who would have thought that Zhong Ping would secretly go down the mountain to seek revenge? During this period of time, Abbot Su Ci had been in seclusion ever since the great battle between the orthodox and demonic paths. Su Yun had also gone to seclusion with Su Jing. The two of them seemed to be working together to predict something. Hence, Su Yun had left the matter of Chu Xiu to Su Yan to handle. After much difficulty, he had reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Su Yan still had to deal with other matters of the Great Light Temple. He was so busy that he did not pay attention to what Zhong Ping had done. Hence, Su Yan blamed himself. Zhong Ping's death was partly due to his negligence. Chu Xiu. The Great Light Temple will not let this go. Su Yan growled in a low voice. Even with his upbringing, he could no longer suppress the rage in his heart at this moment. He had just reached an agreement with Chu Xiu for 3 months. Initially, he thought that the Great Light Temple would be quieter after 3 months. In the end, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would kill a disciple of the Great Light Temple? What did he mean by this? At that moment, the Vajrayard disciple said weakly, "Master, that senior brother Zhong Ping was not killed by Chu Xiu." Su Yan was stunned. What? He wasn't killed by Chu Xiu? Didn't he go down the mountain to seek revenge on Chu Xiu? If it wasn't Chu Xiu, even if it was Chu Xiu's subordinates, the result would be the same as Chu Xiu's. The disciple said, "Senior brother Zhong Ping died in the hands of Yuan Tianfang, the 10 Directions old devil, who was a true fire spirit refinement realm expert of the Hidden Devil clan." Yuan Tianfang? Why does he want to kill Zhong Ping? Su Yan was puzzled. The disciple explained, "It's like this. Senior brother Zhong Ping wanted to use poison to weaken Chu Xiu's strength. However, no one expected that Chu Xiu was not poisoned. Instead, he was discovered by Yuan Tianfang. Maybe Yuan Tianfang thought that senior brother Zhong Ping wanted to harm him, so he was killed by Yuan Tianfang before he could explain." Su Yan frowned and said, "Are you sure that Chu Xiu didn't spread this on purpose?" The disciple said, "I've already asked around. Back then many people witnessed this scene. It was Yuan Tianfang who did it. It wasn't deliberately spread." Su Yan rubbed his head. He felt a headache. One Chu Xiu was troublesome enough. He didn't expect Yuan Tianfang to appear. If attacking Chu Xiu was troublesome, then attacking Yuan Tianfang was no longer troublesome. It was simply courting death. Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Jing were in closed-door cultivation. If he disturbed them because of a personal grudge of a disciple named Zhong, then he really didn't know his priorities. Therefore, Su Yan could only sigh deeply. He sat cross-legged in front of Zhong Ping's corpse and recited scriptures. Finally, he said in a low voice, "Go, bury Zhong Ping's corpse in the Bodhi forest at the back of the mountain." A few disciples had just carried Zhong Ping's corpse away when a disciple came to report that Chu Xiu had come to visit. Su Yan's frown deepened when he heard those 2 words. What is he doing here? Although Zhong Ping didn't die at the hands of Chu Xiu, his death was inextricably linked to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu hadn't destroyed the Feng family, How could Zhong Ping have gone down the mountain to take revenge? Moreover, Su Yin hated Chu Xiu's ruthless methods to the point that the roots of his teeth itched. While the Great Light Temple was dealing with the moon-worshipping cult, Chu Xiu ran amok throughout the northern Yin. He killed wantonly and had no scruples. After the matter with the Great Light Temple was over, the losses on both sides became extremely great. Only the hidden devil lineage didn't suffer any losses. Moreover, Chu Xiu also rose to fame during that battle and became the #1 person among the younger generation of the demonic path. He was no longer so easy to deal with. Chu Xiu was right. It wasn't that the Great Light Temple couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes, but it depended on whether the sand was big enough. The small sand had basically been crushed by the Great Light Temple, but Chu Xiu was no longer sand. He was more like a rock with edges. Su Yin thought for a moment and said, "Bring Chu Xiu in." In front of the Great Light Temple's mountain gate, Chu Xiu was leisurely admiring the scenery outside. The Great Light Temple was majestic and spectacular. He was at the peak of the snowy mountain. At a glance he could see all the mountains and rivers. Of course there were some areas that didn't match. There were some small dots around the Great Light Temple. These small dots were the forces that Chu Xiu had thrown to dig holes around the Great Light Temple. They were still digging tirelessly, waiting to dig out the last place where the treasures were hidden. Standing here, Chu Xiu finally understood how the warriors of the Great Light Temple felt. With this group of people around, it was indeed an eyesore. The few young disciples of the Great Light Temple who were guarding the door looked at Chu Xiu with disgust and vigilance. They didn't know what this notorious demonic path murderer was doing at their Great Light Temple. However, when the news that Su Yin had allowed Chu Xiu to enter came from inside, these disciples who were guarding the door were even more shocked. A demon whose hands were stained with blood was actually qualified to enter the Great Light Temple? However, their master had given the order, so they could only bring Chu Xiu in reluctantly. Along the way, Chu Xiu was also carefully observing. The Great Light Temple was able to pass down its legacy for tens of thousands of years without any signs of decline. Firstly, it proved that the Great Light Temple's legacy was indeed powerful. Secondly, it proved that the Great Light Temple really had a way of nurturing its disciples. Along the way, Chu Xiu met many young disciples of the Great Light Temple. Even if these disciples had just entered and had not started practicing martial arts, they were all full of vigor. Even if these disciples had slightly weaker potential, their future achievements would be stronger than those warriors who grew up in an environment of scheming and plotting against each other since young. Su Yin brought Chu Xiu into a monastery where he was waiting for him. Seeing Chu Xiu enter, Su Yin frowned and said, "Chu Xiu, what are you doing here? Aren't you afraid that you'll be able to enter the Great Light Temple, but not be able to leave?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yin even dares to come to the fluttering snow city in the far north to see me, so why wouldn't I dare to come to the Great Light Temple to see you?" Su Yin said exasperatedly, "Speak, why did you come to my Great Light Temple? But if you can't give me a good reason, then you'll have to put in a lot of effort if you want to leave." Chu Xiu put away his joking tone and said in a deep voice, "Regarding the death of your esteemed temple's disciple, I feel that it's a great pity." Su Yin laughed coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, there's no need to say such hypocritical words. You should know Zhong Ping's identity. He came here to kill you, so what are you feeling pity for? Shouldn't you be applauding and cheering?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "To others, perhaps I am such a person, but I, Chu Xiu, am not so petty. This is how the martial world is. If I don't kill, others will kill me. I've wiped out the Feng clan and achieved my goal, so I don't regret it. Zhong Ping dared to assassinate me for a clan that did not treat him well. Although it was a narrow escape, he still dared to make a move. This is courage. Such a courageous young man, even if he was my enemy, even if I killed him, I would still praise him. This is not contradictory. Master Su Yin, don't think of people as so evil. A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. Respecting your opponent is also respecting yourself at the same time. Those who insist on slicing their enemies into 1,000 pieces and grinding their bones to dust are all perverts." When Chu Xiu said these imposing words, Lu Jiang he almost went crazy with laughter. This guy actually had the cheek to say that he was magnanimous? Who knew how Zhong Ping had been schemed to death? Zhong Ping probably did not know until his death that his death was not an accident. Furthermore, Lu Jiang he also discovered that the greatest difference between Chu Xiu and Dugu Weiwei was not strength but that he, Chu Xiu, was much more shameless than the church master. He did not even blink when he lied in front of others. Su Yin looked at Chu Xiu in astonishment. It seemed like he had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yin was rather open-minded. He knew that the righteous Tao was the righteous Tao, and the demonic Tao was the demonic Tao. Although they were enemies, they could not deny a person just because the other party was of the demonic Tao. For example, Wuxia of the 9 heavenly mountains, 5 great heavenly demons, the jade-face heavenly demon who had bewitched thousands of girls in the martial world. Su Yan admired that person's courage when facing thousands of people was worthy of his admiration. Although Su Yan wished for nothing more than for Wuxia to die earlier, that way the hidden demon lineage would have one less expert, one who was clear-headed and rational. Su Yan's tone softened a little as he said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. What exactly do you want by coming here?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "I'm here to help your great light temple take revenge. Yuan Tianfang, do you want to kill him?" Su Yan was shocked. He had not expected Chu Xiu to say such a thing. However, Su Yan then snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, you're speaking nonsense in my great light temple. Do you really not want to leave?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm not speaking nonsense. Yuan Tianfang and I have a grudge against each other for killing my disciple. Furthermore, he stole my martial suppression hall. It's normal for me to want to kill him, isn't it?" Su Yan frowned and said, "But Yuan Tianfang is one of your hidden demon lineage's own people." The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up into a strange smile and said, "One of my own people? Master Su Yan, you're wrong. Here there are only those who can be killed and those who cannot be killed. There have never been any of my own people. Yuan Tianfang injured my subordinates, stole my martial suppression hall, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Naturally, he is the kind of person who can be killed." Chapter 802. It was possible for Chu Xiu to come to the Great Light Temple for anything, but Su Yan would never have thought that Chu Xiu would come to join forces with him to kill one of his own. Anyway, from Su Yan's perspective, Yuan Tianfang was one of the hidden devil faction. Just like the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, even if they had conflicts, they would not kill each other because they all belonged to the Buddhist faction. But now, Chu Xiu's actions were incomprehensible to Su Yan. Looking at Su Yan's expression, Chu Xiu said calmly, "Master Su Yan, you don't have to worry about why I want to kill one of my own. You just have to think about one thing. That is, killing Yuan Tianfang is beneficial to the Great Light Temple. Yuan Tianfang killed a disciple of the Great Light Temple. This grudge has already been formed. Moreover, Yuan Tianfang is the big boss of the Yinma lineage, a powerhouse of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Killing him is also helpful in weakening the strength of the Yinma lineage. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple, is there?" Hearing this, Su Yan's expression became even stranger. A member of the Hidden Devil faction was standing in front of him and discussing with him how to weaken the Hidden Devil faction. Was there anything more bizarre than this? Chu Xiu continued, "Actually, Master Su Yan, you should be happy. It's best if the entire Hidden Devil faction is filled with people like me who are selfish and don't care about the interests of the entire sect. That way, even without the suppression of the orthodox sects, the Hidden Devil faction will probably die from internal strife." Su Yan took a deep breath and said, "Regardless of whether what you say is true or not, there is no harm to the Great Light Temple if we can kill Yuan Tianfang. But now the Great Light Temple can't do anything. The righteous and demonic battle has just ended, and the Great Light Temple doesn't want to do anything on a large scale because of the conflict in the martial world. If we kill Yuan Tianfang, the Great Light Temple will definitely attract the revenge of the entire Hidden Devil faction. Although the Great Light Temple isn't afraid if we fight, it will still be a situation where both sides suffer. This is also what the Great Light Temple doesn't want to see." As he said this, Su Yan glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "Otherwise, why do you think the Temple of Great Light rarely interferes when you've caused such a ruckus in the northern Yan? Firstly, you have an agreement with Shudu. Secondly, the Great Light Temple really does not want to stir up trouble at this time. Secondly, even if the Great Light Temple wants to make a move, we are powerless now. Senior Brother Abbot is in closed-door training. Senior Brother Su Yun and Senior Brother Su Jing are also in closed-door training. Without a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse to take action, I don't want the other disciples of the Great Light Temple to die in vain." Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and said, "These 2 points are very simple. Master Su Yan, don't forget that in the Hidden Devil lineage, my position is no worse than Yuan Tianfang's. Don't worry, as long as Yuan Tianfang is killed, I will naturally deal with the Hidden Devil lineage. I will not let the Great Light Temple and the Hidden Devil lineage start a fierce battle." Su Yan frowned and said, "But what if you deliberately fail to do it?" Chu Xiu said alone, "Master Su Yan, please don't worry about this. I Chu Xiu still have this bit of credibility. Moreover, I don't want the current hidden devil lineage to go against the Great Light Temple. In that case, I don't think there will be much left of the family business that I have set up in the Northern Yen. As for the last point, it is even simpler. This time, even if Master Su Yun is not in closed-door training, I can't afford to invite him. The Great Light Temple only needs to send one person. Oh. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, the head of Kongji Zen Hall, Master Su Du. Among the monks of the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu had fought with Su Xing of the Dharma Hall. The strength of the other party could only be regarded as above average among the martial artists of the same rank. It was not weak, but it was definitely not the strong kind. But Su Du was different. Anyway, Chu Xiu couldn't see the depth of his strength. He was the kind that had reached the peak of the real pellet state. He was definitely qualified to challenge the real fire spirit refinement state. Su Yin was still a little hesitant. He acted calmly and never liked to do things that were too risky. In his opinion, this matter with Chu Xiu was a bit risky. Anyway, a person from the Hidden Devil lineage came to the Great Light Temple to ask him to join forces to kill a martial artist from the Hidden Devil lineage. No matter how he thought about it, it was awkward. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, I agree to this matter. I've long been displeased with that old thing Yuan Tianfeng. Some time ago, his disciples actually forced the Shizong Lu family who sold spiritual wine to move away. This is outrageous. I have never seen a martial arts family that is more honest than the Lu family. Within a family they only rely on selling spiritual wine to survive. He even bullies such a family. Bastard. Su Du rolled up the sleeves of his monk robe with a wine gourd hanging on his waist. He walked in aggressively with a look of righteous indignation. Su Yin slapped his head helplessly and said, Senior brother Su Du, how did you know about this? You even know that a small family like the Lu family is in trouble. Since when did you care so much about the martial arts world's news? Su Du waved his hand casually and said, Don't worry about how I know. We Buddhists are merciful. If something happens, we should take care of it. Chu Xiu, you are responsible for luring that old guy out. I will kill him along the way. Let's join forces and kill this old guy. At this time, Su Du looked like a bandit. He looked like he had a feud with Yuan Tianfeng who killed his father. It was unknown whether it was because he hated evil or because Yuan Tianfeng's disciples caused him to have no wine to drink. Seeing that Su Du had already agreed, Su Yin was helpless at this time. In front of Chu Xiu, how could he embarrass Su Du? Moreover, apart from the abbot of the Great Light Temple, the three great meditation halls' first seats were in charge. If Su Du was not unreliable with his strength, Su Du would have been in charge of the Great Light Temple when the abbot, Su Ci, Su Yun, and Su Jing were all in seclusion. Chu Xiu said with a smile, when we have a concrete plan to take action, I will get someone to inform Master Su Du. With that, Chu Xiu bade farewell and left. After Chu Xiu left, Su Yin grumbled, Senior brother Su Du, why did you agree so quickly? Chu Xiu rushed to join forces with the Great Light Temple. There must be some hidden reasons. Moreover, the other party is a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse from the Hidden Devil clan. No matter what, you have to think it through. You agreed so quickly. Isn't that too hasty? Shudu shook his head and said, Oh, you worry too much. Let me ask you, if the lineage of hidden demons loses a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator, will it benefit the Temple of Great Light, or even the orthodox martial arts world? Su Yin said, Of course. Even if we lose an ordinary demonic martial artist, it will still be beneficial to the orthodox martial arts world, much less a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. When the demon disappears, the righteous will rise. The demon cannot suppress the righteous. This has been the case since ancient times. Su Du spread his hands and said, That's it. What's the use of thinking so much? Junior brother Su Yin, it's not that I want to criticize you, but sometimes you really should be more decisive. Yuan Tianfeng, that old thing, has stirred up the entire Northern Yen. Although Chu Xiu isn't a good person, at least he knows the rules. Otherwise, you wouldn't have agreed to a 3-month deadline with him, right? Moreover, that old thing Yuan Tianfeng was simply bad and stupid. His group of idiotic disciples had tormented the Wulin of Northern Yen Kingdom. The Great Light Temple is one of the leaders of the orthodox martial arts world, the #1 sect in Northern Yen. Are we really going to let Yuan Tianfeng's disciples do as they please? How will the other forces look at the Great Light Temple? If we settle this a day later, it will be a heavy blow to the reputation of the Great Light Temple. Su Yin looked at Su Du in surprise. He could actually see the relationship of interest so clearly? Now, Su Yan could not tell if Su Du wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang for the benefit of the Great Light Temple or if he wanted to kill Yuan Tianfang purely because he could not drink any wine. At this time, after Chu Xiu returned to the Jinwu Hall, he was thinking of a way to lure Yuan Tianfang out of the Jinwu Hall. The other party always stayed in Yanjing City. One reason was that Chu Xiu did not want to make a move here as it would cause too much of a commotion. Another reason was that Chu Xiu was afraid that the northern Yan court would interfere at will. As for Xiang Long, Chu Xiu did not have much hope. The cooperation between him and Xiang Long was now only in name. Both sides were close to completely falling out. Luring Yuan Tianfang out was actually very simple. Chu Xiu asked for Shui Wuxiang's help, as well as the cooperation of a small clan. He engraved an ancient array formation in that clan's territory, then deceived Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples, saying that this was a supreme treasure passed down from ancient times, but no one was able to open it. Of course, the ancient formation that Shui Wuxiang was proficient in was not something that these people could open at will. Even when they asked Duan Jiao for help, even Duan Jiao could not open it. They could only let Yuan Tianfang go alone. After leaving Yanjing City, Yuan Tianfang only had a feeling of unease, but he could not find the source of this feeling. The perception of warriors was extremely sharp, especially those like Yuan Tianfang. In the past, when Yuan Tianfang was in his prime, he killed wantonly in Jianghu. That was not a joke, so Yuan Tianfang's perception was the most acute at that time. But now, as he grew older, although Yuan Tianfang's qi and blood did not decline, it was no longer growing. As for his perception, it had actually begun to degenerate. Therefore, Yuan Tianfang had always thought that there was something dangerous hidden in the ancient formation. He was still thinking about how he should break the formation. At this moment, Yuan Tianfang's footsteps suddenly stopped. At the end of the road, there was a slovenly monk with a wine gourd on his waist looking at him angrily, as if he had a grudge against Yuan Tianfang for killing his father. Looking at the monk, Yuan Tianfang knew that the other party should be a monk from the Great Light Temple, and his strength was definitely not weak. He could even faintly feel the terrifying power in the other party's body. Yuan Tianfang thought that the other party was here because he had killed Zhong Ping, so he said, "This is the Great Light Temples." However, Su Du did not give him a chance to speak at all. He immediately shouted angrily and rushed forward, "Old demon Yuan, die!" Chapter 803. Su Du's strength had always been a mystery. Even some people in the Great Light Temple did not understand how strong this somewhat unruly Kongji Zen Hall chief was. In the past, Chu Wuji had fought with Su Du, and even Chu Wuji could not figure out Su Du's strength. However, the only thing that was certain was that Su Du had definitely reached the peak of the real pellet state, and his combat power was amazing. He was definitely the kind of existence that could compete with the true fire spirit refinement state. At this time, Su Du's body was shining with Buddha's light, and a glaring Vajra appeared behind him. As he punched, the glaring Vajra roared at the sky, and the surrounding Buddha's light turned into angry flames that smashed down. Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly. He took a step forward, and the boundless demonic qi around him had already soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. In an instant, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Even people more than 10 miles away could perceive this powerful force. When the true fire spirit refinement state attacked, the power couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. Some of the nearby martial artists were shivering. They were curious and wanted to check it out, but they didn't have the guts. It also required strength to watch the show. If they wanted to watch the show with their little strength, they would die. At this time in the field, the 8 giant demonic qi hands in the air were positioned in 8 directions, and they smashed towards Su Du at the same time. With a loud bang, the Buddha's light was extinguished, and the glaring Vajra was directly smashed. Yuan Tianfang put his hands together to form a seal, and the 8 giant demonic qi hands condensed in 8 directions, instantly turning into a huge cage trapping Su Du in it. Yuan Tianfang also saw that although the monk's strength was amazing, he was only a martial Dao master. He had not reached the true fire spirit refinement state yet, so Yuan Tianfang could subdue him. After all, not everyone in the underworld was like Qinqing Di, who had the strength to blow away the true fire spirit refinement state with one punch at the real pellet state. Yuan Tianfang didn't continue to attack. He just asked, "I don't seem to have any grudges with your Great Light Temple, right? What do you mean by attacking me?" Su Du sneered, "Old man, you killed my Great Light Temple's disciple and you say there's no grudge? Of course, the most despicable thing is that you caused me to have no wine to drink." Yuan Tianfang frowned. "What does it have to do with me if you don't have any wine to drink?" However, before Yuan Tianfang could continue to say anything, another Guanyin Dharma form emerged from the Buddhist light around Shudu. It had 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Endless Buddhist light bloomed and melted. In an instant, Yuan Tianfang's devil chi giant hand was completely eroded and melted. As Shudu pinched the Buddhist seal with his hand, the Dharma form behind him quickly transformed into the immovable Wisdom King Dharma form with 4 faces and 8 arms. As Shudu attacked, it smashed toward Yuan Tianfang. Yuan Tianfang frowned. Who was this monk? This martial Tao was a little too exaggerated. Ordinary martial artists of the Great Light Temple mainly cultivated one path. For example, Zhongxian mainly cultivated the Vajra seal, while the monks of the Vajra Yard naturally cultivated the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, cultivating the power of Vajra. Su Du, on the other hand, had a myriad of changes in his martial path. He cultivated the power of Vajra and the Bodhisattva view. Now he even had the Wisdom King seal. He worshipped the Buddha, but Shudu had fused the different attributes of Buddhist power into one. Was this guy sincere and thought that all Buddhas were equal, or did he not take these Buddhas seriously at all? Yuan Tianfang had not been to the Central Plains for a long time. In addition, Shudu usually kept a low profile, so Yuan Tianfang did not recognize Shudu. However, he was sure that someone with such strength was at least a first seat of the Great Light Temple. So when he attacked, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly as he attacked. What is the Great Light Temple trying to do? Don't think that I really don't dare to kill. He did not think that the other party had come to kill him just because of a disciple. If the Great Light Temple was so reckless, they probably would not have survived until now. Shudu did not answer and continued to attack wildly. Seeing this, Yuan Tianfang snorted coldly and said, "Good, good, good. Since you want to fight, then don't blame I for not showing mercy to the Great Light Temple." For so many years, it had always been him, Yuan Tianfang, who chased and attacked others like a madman. When had there ever been a time when others chased and attacked him? As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang flourished, and the demonic qi whirlpool in midair stirred. As Yuan Tianfang formed a fist seal, he smashed it down. Every time he smashed it, one of Shudu's dharma would be smashed to pieces, causing him to grimace in pain. In the past, Yuan Tianfang was able to kill the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect and the true martial cult. In terms of strength, Yuan Tianfang was definitely not weak. Moreover, what others did not know was that Yuan Tianfang had not given his true inheritance to anyone, including Xing Situ. Yuan Tianfang's 10 Directions Infinite Heaven-Shaking Demonic Technique was a demonic technique that he had created himself. It was a fusion of countless ancient demonic techniques that Yuan Tianfang had collected over the years, as well as some demonic techniques and secret techniques of the Kunlun devil cult. Its power was indeed very strong. Of course, he had named it himself. From Yuan Tianfang's point of view, the longer the name, the stronger the technique. His demonic technique was worthy of its name. The demonic might was vast and majestic. Even Shudu could not do anything about this kind of crushing power. After all, he was not at the true fire spirit refinement realm yet. At that moment, Yuan Tianfang suddenly felt an extreme sense of danger. His heart began to beat wildly and a chill rushed to his heart. In that instant, Yuan Tianfang immediately changed his target and retreated. The demonic qi whirlpool condensed 10 giant arms. This was Yuan Tianfang's full attack. As Yuan Tianfang's hands formed a seal, the 10 giant demonic hands also formed a seal at the same time. 10 Directions Demon Seal. While Yuan Tianfang was forming a seal, a pitch-black arrow had already shot out. Everywhere it passed, the qi of heaven and earth was destroyed. The pitch-black arrow blasted onto the 10 Directions Demon Seal. The demonic qi was black, but the black on the arrow could be said to be the ultimate black. It was the power of destruction, the power of nirvanic extermination. In an instant, the 10-directional Skyfiend seal began to crumble, and the 10 giant demonic hands also began to crumble. The demonic qi around Yuan Tianfang surged, and a huge vortex of demonic qi rushed over, wrapping the power of the arrow within it. But in the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. But fortunately, the moment the demonic qi whirlpool shattered, the power of the arrow finally dissipated. Chu Xiu. Yuan Tianfang spat out these 2 words through gritted teeth. His face was full of killing intent as he looked at Chu Xiu behind him. Triple City Annihilation Arrow. In the past, Dugu Weiwei destroyed the Iron Emperor Castle. Although few people in the outside world knew about it, it could not be hidden from the people inside the Yinma clan. They had long known that Chu Xiu had obtained a part of Dugu Weiwei's inheritance in the secret realm left behind by the Yinma clan. Yuan Tianfang never thought that Chu Xiu would dare to kill him. Where did he get such courage from? He was one of the big shots of the Yinma clan, one of the leaders of the entire Yinma clan. No matter how glorious Chu Xiu was, he was still a junior. Had he ever thought of the consequences of offending his superiors? At the same time, Yuan Tianfang's heart was palpitating. In the past, Patriarch Dugu's martial arts were so powerful that it made people tremble. Back then, Fang Jinwu died under Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Although his strength was much stronger than Fang Jinwu, he had to use all his strength to block the arrow. Moreover, under the sneak attack, if he had been a little slower, he would have been seriously injured even if he had not died. Just as Yuan Tianfang was about to say something, Su Du, who was behind him, had already made his move. Behind Su Du, the guardian deity, bodhisattvas and Buddhas and countless shadows flashed behind him. Thousands of Buddhas and 10,000 Dharma, only one thought in the heart is eternal. Suddenly, countless Buddha shadows condensed in it. The Buddha's light shone and completely enveloped Yuan Tianfang. At this time Chu Xiu also moved. Although using the Triple City Annihilation Arrow just now consumed a lot of energy, the current Chu Xiu was not the Chu Xiu who had killed Fang Jinwu. One arrow could hollow him out. The heavenly demon dance slashed down with an angry roar of devil chi and an evil devouring power. There was even a faint image of a hungry ghost that was attached to it, roaring constantly. "You are courting death." Yuan Tianfang's eyes were bloodshot. He never thought that Chu Xiu would be so bold as to join forces with the monks of the Great Light Temple to kill him. What was he trying to do? Was he going to cut himself off from the hidden devil lineage? At this time, neither Su Du nor Chu Xiu responded to Yuan Tianfang. They were here to kill, so what was the point of saying so much useless stuff? Even Su Du, who had always been flirtatious, only attacked at this time and did not say a word. The devil chi that soared into the sky was like a volcanic eruption. The power accumulated by Yuan Tianfang after so many years of cultivating several kinds of devil skills was simply amazing. The devil power soared into the sky and instantly broke through the shackles of the Buddha's light. At the same time, Yuan Tianfang stretched out his hand, and the giant hand of devil chi that he had transformed directly grabbed the blade of Chu Xiu. However, in an instant, the power of the hungry ghost broke out, and the giant hand of devil chi was directly swallowed in half. However, at this time, 8 giant hands of devil chi fell at the same time, either with fists, palms, or finger techniques. Each giant hand of devil chi contained a kind of martial arts transformation. For a demonic rogue cultivator like Yuan Tianfang who had risen from humble beginnings, although their inheritance of martial arts might not be stronger than that of Chu Xiu, the number of martial arts he mastered was not inferior to that of Chu Xiu. At the moment when the giant hands of devil chi fell, a blood shadow flashed around Chu Xiu. The great blood shadow technique was displayed, and the blood shadows all over the sky met the 8 giant hands. Blood-colored sword chi soared into the sky, blood-colored Buddha's light filled the air, and even blood-colored thunderbolts crashed down. The martial arts of these experts from 500 years ago were displayed to the extreme at this moment, and the 8 giant hands of devil chi were directly smashed to pieces. Behind Yuan Tianfang, Su Du changed his previous cheeky appearance. His dharma was solemn, and in the Buddha's light, countless Buddha shadows merged into his body. As his palm fell, 10,000 Buddhas became one. The powerful devil chi around Yuan Tianfang was directly penetrated, and he was blasted by the palm. His face instantly turned extremely pale. At this time, the surrounding boundless blood shadows also merged into one, attached to Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance. The blood-colored blade slashed down, directly leaving a huge wound on Yuan Tianfang's chest, and blood suddenly gushed out. Chapter 804. Yuan Tianfang could be said to be extremely miserable at this time. The Buddha's light entered his body, and the hot Buddha's light was like magma, constantly eroding and destroying his meridians. The restraint of Buddha's aura on the demonic martial artist was exerted to the maximum in an instant. Moreover, Chu Xiu's attack was even more demonic. At the same time that it injured him, there was a wave of power that kept on devouring his vital energy and blood, weakening his power. Yuan Tianfang never imagined that one day he would be forced into such a state by 2 real pellet state martial artists. Even when he was defeated by the old Taoist of Mount Longhu, he wasn't so embarrassed. Moreover, the old Taoist of Mount Longhu that he lost to in the past was not an ordinary person. Although the old Taoist was unknown in Jianghu, he was the old Taoist apprentice of the old Taoist master. In other words, he almost served the old Taoist master for a lifetime. Although he was younger than the old Taoist master, he was not much younger. It was not shameful to be severely injured by such a person, but now he was forced to such an extent by the joint forces of the two juniors, Chu Xiu and Su Du. At this moment, Yuan Tianfang's fierceness had been aroused. In an instant, bloody demonic patterns appeared on Yuan Tianfang's face, and the demonic qi around him was also mixed with a trace of bloody color. His breath became extremely fierce. Lu Jiang, he said in surprise, this old guy actually learned the blood demon transformation technique. Who the hell leaked this thing? Chu Xiu asked, this is part of your blood demon demonic power? Lu Jiang, he nodded, then shook his head and said, this is a mystic art that I researched in the past to match the blood demon demonic power. It can maximize the power of qi and blood in the body infused with demonic qi. It is enough to change the world, but I sealed it and gave up in the end. The reason is that when I was studying this mystic art, I went to the extreme. The blood demon demonic power's recovery ability is amazing, second only to the indestructible demonic pill. However, this secret technique consumed the qi and blood essence of the original body. Rather than using this secret technique to put his life on the line, the original body might as well burn his blood essence to escape and come back for revenge after he recovered. It seems that my blood demon hall was thoroughly ransacked in the past. Even something like this was dug out. Kid, be careful. Even I haven't used this thing before, but the effects of the deduction are extremely shocking. Chu Xiu secretly curled his lips. To put it bluntly, Lu Jiang, he was afraid of death and didn't want to fight with his life on the line. That was why he sealed such a desperate secret technique. However, the effect of this secret technique could be said to be quite remarkable. When Yuan Tianfang, an old devil of the true fire spirit refinement realm, started to fight with all his might, the power was simply astonishing. The 10 giant arms began to transform. Behind the arm, a huge demonic shadow appeared. In an instant, the area within a few dozen li turned into a demonic domain. The powerful demonic power directly suppressed Su Du's figure and forced him to retreat step by step. The demonic shadow whistled down, and the layer of Buddha's light around Su Du's body was directly melted. It seemed that he would not be able to withstand it. Chu Xiu pinched a Buddhist seal with his hand and displayed the sun-changing technique. The Vairocana phantom behind him also bloomed with endless Buddha's light, wanting to use the Buddha's light to resist this earth-shaking demonic power. However, under the suppression of the demonic shadow, the power of Vairocana was actually no match and was completely crushed. Lu Jiang, he chuckled in Chu Xiu's mind and said, what did I say? This is a secret technique created by me in the past. Even if it was sealed because it was useless, its power should not be underestimated. Also, I said before, if you want to sneak attack, then sneak attack. Why use the Triple City Annihilation Arrow? Save your strength and use it as a final trump card, okay? Shut up. Chu Xiu spat at Lu Jiang. This guy's mouth was too loose. As Chu Xiu made his move, he began to command in Chu Xiu's mind. However, this guy's fighting style was a little too wretched. Most of Lu Jiang's previous opponents had been exhausted to death by him. He was not like Chu Xiu, who was mainly fierce and violent, attacking forcefully the moment he started. At this time, Su Du could not hold on any longer. He finally said, I say Chu Xiu, it's not that I'm running away, but that old thing is too fierce. You didn't say that he still had this move. Chu Xiu was sure that Su Du must still have a trump card at this time. However, looking at Su Du's appearance, it was obvious that he was not going to use his trump card to fight with Yuan Tianfang. For the Great Light Temple, killing Yuan Tianfang was indeed in line with their long-term interests. However, Yuan Tianfang was already seriously injured and had even begun to use a life-risking secret technique. In the future, Yuan Tianfang would definitely end up seriously injured and would not have the strength to continue messing around in the northern Yen land. This was also in line with the Great Light Temple's interests. Therefore, even if he withdrew and retreated, he would not be at a disadvantage. There was no need to fight with his life on the line. As for Chu Xiu, he could only say sorry. Chu Xiu's expression did not change. To be honest, he borrowed the Great Light Temple's hand to find an excuse and another layer of insurance. Killing people still depended on oneself. Under the demonic might, Chu Xiu dispersed the Buddhist light on his body. Suddenly, an extremely evil power surged around his body. He formed a seal with his hands. The complicated seal was something that Lu Jiang he had never seen before. At the same time, Chu Xiu spat out syllables from his mouth. The sound did not sound like a human's voice. It was extremely strange. Lu Jiang he felt a chill in his heart when he heard it, and he could not help but tremble. In midair, the huge dark clouds of demonic qi had been affected by Yuan Tianfang's aura. However, at this time, it had all turned into a pitch-black color. Within a radius of dozens of miles, the sun and moon had lost their light. It had turned into an eternal night. Su Du shuddered violently. He looked at Chu Xiu and then at the sky. What was this thing? The fierce aura had surpassed Yuan Tianfang's demonic qi. It was as if some ancient evil creature had been released. Even Yuan Tianfang could not help but feel a chill in his heart. This power actually made him, who had entered the stage of fighting with his life on the line, feel fear. At this moment, an extremely shrill cry sounded. It did not sound like a human's voice, but it carried an evil power that penetrated people's hearts. Su Du's face turned pale and he chanted scriptures to resist it. Yuan Tianfang, who bore the brunt of it, spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a dead man's. The cries continued. In the pitch-black world, blood-colored raindrops fell as if the heavens were crying. The devil qi around Yuan Tianfang was completely melted by the blood-red raindrops. He was struggling, but in his incantation-like cries, his struggles became weaker and weaker, until he was completely lifeless. When the last raindrop fell, Yuan Tianfang's body seemed to have vaporized, and in an instant he turned into countless specks of dust that scattered in the air. The blood rain stopped, and the eternal night dispersed. Su Du looked at Chu Xiu in shock. At this moment, Chu Xiu was still standing there, but the aura on his body was unstable. In particular, his eyes, which did not contain the slightest human emotion, only endless fierceness. It could be said to be extremely evil. It was not until a moment later that Chu Xiu's eyes returned to normal, but at the same time, an extreme sense of exhaustion swept through his body. Looking at the scene in front of him, even Chu Xiu did not expect the power of this cultivation method to be so strong. This was the ultimate power brought about by combining the 7 forms of the Great Compassion Mantra, the Great Compassion Mantra of Heaven and Earth conquering Devil Wailing Heaven. In the past, Chu Xiu had only tried the starting form of this cultivation method slightly, and he had already suffered a backlash. Now that he had really used it, Yuan Tianfang was directly strangled until not even his ashes were left, but the power of the backlash was extremely terrifying. When he performed it just now, the power of the Great Compassion Mantra of Devil Wailing Heaven went straight into the bottom of his heart. It was an extremely and evil power, which could be said to be the combination of all the ferocity in the world. It could be said that if one was not careful, the caster would fall into it and go completely crazy, becoming a ferocious existence without the slightest emotion, only knowing how to destroy and kill everything. In the end, Chu Xiu seemed to have a feeling that the power that Dugu Weiwei had left for him last time was activated, which was why the backlash of the Great Compassion Mantra of Devil Wailing Heaven was blocked. In short, it was better not to use this cultivation method unless it was a critical moment. Lu Jiang he seemed to have only just reacted and he said in shock, F***CK F***CK. This is the combination of the 7 forms of the Great Compassion Mantra of Heaven and Earth conquering Yin and Yang? You actually gathered all of this evil cultivation method? Even 500 years ago, the Great Compassion Mantra of Yin and Yang was very famous. Many people wanted to completely gather it, but no one had been able to do it. He did not expect that when Chu Xiu used these 7 cultivation methods as one, the power brought about would make Lu Jiang he feel a chill all over his body. Su Du looked at Chu Xiu and there was no smile on his face, only deep fear. He even had to consider whether he should attack Chu Xiu at this time. Because now he realized that compared to Chu Xiu, Yuan Tianfang was simply a scum. If Chu Xiu cultivated to the true fire spiritual cultivation realm, he could not imagine what kind of power Chu Xiu would have. He was afraid that at that time the demonic flames would really be monstrous. However, Su Du did not make a move because he was not sure. Just now, even the aftermath of the Great Compassion Mantra was unbearable for Su Du. He had to rest for a period of time, and he had to admit that Chu Xiu scared him. Although this level of power was not something that ordinary people could control, and Chu Xiu must be exhausted now, he did not dare to gamble. What if Chu Xiu still had strength left? After a long while, Chu Xiu smiled and said, Congratulations to Master Su Du for killing Yuan Tianfang. Real pellet state killing true fire spiritual cultivation realm. This kind of achievement is enough for Master Su Du to enter the top 10 of the martial artist list. Su Du frowned, but you killed him. Chu Xiu said with a smile, That's not important. Yuan Tianfang is already dead, and there's only the 2 of us left here. Whoever I say killed him is the one who killed him. I will give this achievement to you, Master Su Du. After returning to the Yinma clan, I will also have an explanation. We each take what we need. We cooperated very happily in this battle. Chapter 805. In the Great Light Temple, Su Yan had been sensing the movements outside. He was a little worried. Although Su Du had always been a little unreliable, he was one of the first seats of the Great Light Temple's 3 great meditation halls. If anything happened to him, it would definitely be a huge loss for the Great Light Temple. Su Yan had wanted to help, but he was mocked by Su Du. He said that with his strength, he would only be a hindrance if he went. Hence, Su Yan did not go in a fit of anger. Now he was even more worried. After a few hours he sensed that Su Du had returned. Su Yan rushed to the door and immediately asked, "What's the result?" Su Du's expression was a little strange. He said softly, "Yuan Tianfang is dead. Not even his bones are left." Su Yan let out a long sigh. It was good that Yuan Tianfang was dead. The Hidden Devil clan had lost a true fire refinement realm powerhouse. The northern Yin land could finally be stable for a while. Su Du continued, "Chu Xiu said that he doesn't want the achievement of killing Yuan Tianfang. He left it to me." Su Yan's face lit up. Although at their level they should not care about their reputation, in reality how many people could really not care? Killing Yuan Tianfang was enough to make Su Du famous in the underworld. He could even enter the top 10 of the Wind Cloud list. However, at that moment, Su Yan realized that something was wrong with Su Du. According to Su Du's personality, he would definitely brag about how difficult the battle was and how strong he was after he returned. He would not stop talking. However, Su Du didn't look pleased at all. In fact, he was a little quiet. "Senior brother Su Du, what's wrong? Did something happen?" Su Du sighed and said, "Junior brother, I seem to have done something wrong this time." Su Yan frowned and said, "What did you do wrong?" Su Du looked into the air and mumbled, "I suddenly realized that compared to Chu Xiu, Yuan Tianfang is nothing. I hope that my thinking is wrong. Otherwise, I might regret it in the future." Su Yan was stunned. He did not understand what Su Du meant. At this time, Chu Xiu had also returned to the Jinwu Hall. After he returned to the Jinwu Hall, the first thing he did was to retreat immediately. The power of the great compassion mantra of heaven and earth intertwining conquering devil cries to heaven was too great. It had almost exhausted all of Chu Xiu's power, whether it was his true qi or his mental power. He even had a feeling that the evil and ferocious aura had always existed in his mind and was slightly affecting him. Of course, while he was in seclusion, he didn't neglect other matters. Chu Xiu joined forces with Su Du to kill Yuan Tianfang so quickly that Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand-disciples didn't even have time to react. Therefore, before Chu Xiu went into seclusion, he sent Mei Qinglian and the others to deal with all these people. Without Yuan Tianfang, this group of people was just a motley crew, nothing more. At this time, in a small clan in the east of Yen, Duan Zhuo was waiting in the living room while cursing. There was a problem with the formation of this small clan, causing him to be unable to open it. He had no choice but to send a message to Yuan Tianfang to come over. After Yuan Tianfang came, he would probably scold him for being trash because he couldn't even handle such a small matter. "I say, old man son, what exactly is in your formation? Let me tell you, if the thing inside is too trash, don't blame me for falling out." Only Duan Zhuo could do such a strange thing after robbing someone else's things and saying that someone else's things were not good. The Sun family's family master was a timid little old man. On the surface he pretended to be respectful, but in fact he was sneering in his heart. He knew all this and was willing to cooperate with Chu Xiu. Compared to Yuan Tianfang, he obviously trusted Chu Xiu more. That lord first became famous in the east of Yen. His confidence in Chu Xiu was obviously greater than that of Yuan Tianfang. At this time, a few warriors guarding the door suddenly ran in a panic. Duan Zhuo frowned and said, "What's wrong? Is your grandmaster here?" The disciples hurriedly shook their heads and said, "It's not grandmaster, it's Chu Xiu's subordinates who have come to fight." Duan Zhuo sneered, "Chu Xiu has already admitted defeat. They actually dare to come and court death?" As he spoke, Duan Zhuo walked out of the door. What greeted him was Lu Fengxian, Tangya, and some other warriors who originally belonged to the Zhenwu Hall. Duan Zhuo sneered and said, "Little Marquis Lu Fengxian? Why, are you here to stand up for your brother? You are not a member of the Zhenwu Hall. You better not get involved in this kind of thing. Even Chu Xiu doesn't dare to speak in front of my master. Why did you bring so many people here? Flaunting your strength or—" Before he could finish speaking, an extremely explosive and fierce devil aura burst out from the halberd in Lu Fengxian's hands. It was incomparably ferocious. As the halberd smashed down, the angry roar was simply ear-piercing. Duan Zhuo didn't expect Lu Fengxian to make a move just like that. He screamed and lines of blood appeared in his hands. Boundless blood aura and devil aura condensed into a giant hand to block in front of him. However, under Lu Fengxian's halberd, no matter what cultivation technique or martial skill it was all shattered with a loud bang. Moreover, the weapon in Lu Fengxian's hand this time was not an ordinary precious weapon, but an unparalleled divine weapon. The huge force and the surging devil aura burst out with a loud bang. That was the extreme strength. With just one move, Duan Jiao was forcefully smashed by Lu Fengxian's halberd. That's right, it was smashed. Like a balloon, it burst with a loud bang. Blood and flesh scattered all over the sky. The scene was extremely terrifying. Duan Jiao's disciples seemed to be dumbfounded. They stood there in a daze for a long time before they let out a scream. Tang Ye grinned. It seemed like he had to get to know this good friend of official Chu's again. Originally, he was a little worried that Lu Fengxian would be a little soft-hearted and be unable to be ruthless. Or that she would first reason with them and want them to take the initiative to submit to her. In the end, he realized that Lu Fengxian's reason and his easygoing attitude were actually only directed at his own people. To outsiders, this person was a standard person. He didn't speak much, and he didn't even bother to enjoy the pleasure of victory. The scene was really very bloody. Lu Fengxian turned around and said to Tang Ye, "I'll leave the rest to you guys. To deal with them, your speed is faster than mine." Tang Ye nodded and revealed a sinister smile on his face as he said, "No problem." As soon as his voice fell, Tang Ye's subordinates, who used to be from the Blue Dragon Society and were now the elites of the Jinwu Hall, made their move and strangled Yuan Tianfang's group of disciples and grand disciples. The same scene happened not only with Duan Jiao, but also everywhere in northern Yen. In almost a day, the people that Chu Xiu had arranged in various places had already been mobilized. In the blink of an eye, they killed all of Yuan Tianfang's disciples and grand disciples, completely destroyed them and took back the Jinwu Hall. Having roamed the pugilistic world for so long, Chu Xiu had done quite a number of things such as destroying clans and exterminating clans. However, this was the first time someone had rushed up to him to be exterminated. He had killed them all. A few days after the end of the matter, the news of Yuan Tianfang's death was completely spread. In fact, when Chu Xiu teamed up with Su Du to besiege Yuan Tianfang that day, the movement of the fight was a little too big and many people around saw it. However, although they saw it, the power was too strong. No one dared to go to the front to watch the battle, so there were no witnesses. When wind-sweeping tower spread the news, the Great Light Temple did not refute it. Only then did everyone really know that Yuan Tianfang was dead. He died in the hands of the Great Light Temple's Kongji Zen Hall's first seat. Su Du. This also made many people sigh. The Great Light Temple's 3 Great Zen Hall's first seats were indeed extraordinary. None of them were mediocre. This news was spread by wind-sweeping tower. To be precise, it was Chu Xiu who instructed Lu Yu to spread it. It could be considered as giving him big news. Although it did not make him the tower master of the Northern Yen branch, he could at least become a big steward. However, since the news was spread by Chu Xiu, there must have been some editing involved. According to Wind Sweeping Tower's version, the Great Light Temple hated Yuan Tianfang for killing their Great Light Temple's disciple and causing trouble in Northern Yen, so the Great Light Temple was filled with righteous indignation and sent Su Du to kill Yuan Tianfang. Of course, Chu Xiu was also involved. The triple city destruction arrow that he shot was too eye-catching. However, Chu Xiu was only a bystander in this story. He only appeared after Yuan Tianfang was killed and shot an arrow. After realizing that it could not do anything to Su Du, he could only let him leave. Chu Xiu didn't care about these false reputations anymore, so he also generously gave this achievement to Su Du. Real Pellet State beheaded the Real Fire Spirit Refinement State, and he also took on Chu Xiu's triple city destruction arrow. With this achievement, Su Du directly stepped into the 10th place on the list. He became the second person in the top 10 of the list besides Qinqing Di to step into the top 10 before reaching the Real Fire Spirit Refinement State. After dealing with Yuan Tianfang's disciples, Mei Qinglian returned to Jinwu Hall. Chu Xiu had almost recovered his own consumption at this time. Mei Qinglian was not excited at this time. Instead, she was a little worried. "I say, you are playing too big this time. You actually joined forces with the Great Light Temple to kill Yuan Tianfang. How are you going to explain to the Yinma clan? Even if there is old Wei, he can't handle such a big thing." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Wrong, it was Su Du who killed Yuan Tianfang, not me. Why should I handle it?" Mei Qinglian frowned and said, "What you did this time is too obvious. Do you think they will believe it?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "Where is the evidence? Yuan Tianfang has already been blasted to smithereens. The dead can't testify. But what about Su Du? We can keep it a secret for you, but are you sure the Great Light Temple will keep it a secret for you?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "This is even easier to explain. The Great Light Temple is an outsider. They definitely hope that our Yinma clan will kill each other, so this is a rumor, a false accusation. Why, they don't believe me, their own people, but they have to believe those bald donkeys." Chapter 806. Mei Qinglian's worry was not unreasonable. This matter was a little too big. The Yinma clan currently did not have a supreme powerhouse at the mysterious heaven and earth realm. The powerhouses at the true fire spirit cultivation realm, were the ones who carried the flag. But now one of them was dead, and it was said that he died at the hands of the Great Light Temple. How could this not cause a sensation? Moreover, it was still unknown whether Yuan Tianfang had died at the hands of Shudu. Just as Mei Qinglian said, although Yuan Tianfang had died without a complete corpse, there were too many suspicious points in this matter that could not stand scrutiny. Chu Xiu had just become enemies with Yuan Tianfang, and then Yuan Tianfang was killed on the other side. Chu Xiu also publicly killed Yuan Tianfang's disciples and descendants. If this matter had nothing to do with Chu Xiu, who would believe it? Therefore, after learning of this matter, the Yinma clan immediately called Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian to meet up with them in eastern Qi. In name it was to ask about the details of the matter, but in fact, it was more like an interrogation. This time, the place was arranged to be in a secret stronghold near the capital of eastern Qi, Great Liang City. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian had been on the road for nearly a month without any rest in between. Only then did they arrive at Great Liang City. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian were so anxious because he wanted to see Wei Shuya in advance. However, things seemed to have changed. In order to prevent Wei Shuya from saying anything to Chu Xiu, the other people of the Yinma clan specially sent people to guard around Great Liang City. As soon as Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian appeared, they were invited away. There was no chance for them to meet Wei Shuya. In the underground hall of the secret stronghold, several big shots of the Yinma clan gathered. Chu Xiu saw Wei Shuya and a few others. They did not come in as comprehensive as during the battle between the righteous and demonic paths. However, this was also very normal. Yuan Tianfang's death was only a personal problem, and the last time was a major event that affected the entire Jianghu. Of course, he had to be more cautious. Wei Shuya looked at Chu Xiu, his face expressionless. It was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. Everyone knew the relationship between him and Chu Xiu, so on this occasion, unless it was a critical moment, it was really not suitable for him to say something. At this time, a big shot of the Hidden Devil clan, who was completely covered in a black robe, said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, I believe you know why we're looking for you. What do you have to say about Yuan Tianfang's death?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Wind Sweeping Tower has already spread the news, what else can I say? Wind Sweeping Tower is news from Wind Sweeping Tower, but why do I feel that something is wrong? The Temple of Great Light should know that Yuan Tianfang is one of the leaders of the Yinma faction. Why did they spend so much effort to kill Yuan Tianfang?" Chu Xiu suddenly laughed and said, "Do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" The big shot of the Hidden Devil clan frowned and said, "Of course it's the truth." "The truth is a little disrespectful to Senior Yuan, are you sure you want to hear it?" "Of course we want to hear it." Chu Xiu snorted and said, "If that's the case, then don't blame me for being harsh. Yuan Tianfang deserved to be killed. I know you suspect that I'm behind this because I have a grudge against Yuan Tianfang. However, just look at what Yuan Tianfang did in the northern Yen land. He was purely challenging the bottom line of the Temple of Great Light. When I was in charge of the Suppression Martial Hall, I joined forces, coerced and lured them and killed to deter them. Only then did I control a part of the situation in the northern Yen martial world. Moreover, after exchanging a few blows with Su Du of the Temple of Great Light, I was finally able to gain a foothold in the northern Yen land. The Temple of Great Light did not touch me because they had no time to do so now. Moreover, I also abided by everyone's tacit agreement and did not mess around. However, what did Yuan Tianfang do when he arrived in the northern Yen land? He led his group of disciples to stir up the entire northern Yen martial world. He simply did not leave anyone the slightest chance of survival. Before he died, there were already many masters of the northern Yen martial world who went to the Temple of Great Light to complain. As the leader of the northern Yen martial world, how could the Temple of Great Light not make a move in this situation? I even put aside my previous grievances and wanted to save Yuan Tianfang. After all, he was a true fire refinement realm powerhouse of the Hidden Devil clan. The death of one was a great loss to the Hidden Devil clan. However, it was a pity that Su Du's cultivation was unfathomable. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the true fire refinement realm. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the second Qinqing Di. I shot an arrow at him with all my strength, but I could not do anything to him. I could only let him kill and leave. If I had forcefully intercepted him, I am afraid that I would have died there in the end. In order to find an excuse, Chu Xiu had increased Su Du's strength by several times. Chu Xiu was not afraid that they would guess it because Su Du was indeed very low-key and rarely fought with others. Among the Hidden Devil clan, there was only one person who had fought with Su Du, Chu Wuji. However, he would definitely not expose it. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, everyone present did not say anything. Indeed, if Yuan Tianfeng's behavior was investigated carefully, it was indeed somewhat suicidal. Coupled with the Temple of Great Light's meddlesome personality, it was really possible that they would make a move on him. At this moment, someone suddenly asked, "The Temple of Great Light killing Yuan Tianfeng is reasonable. However, according to what we know, after Yuan Tianfeng died, you killed his disciples wantonly. What? Do you still dare to say that it was not because of personal grievances?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "To be honest, there are some elements of personal grievances in this. However, this is not the real reason. The real reason is that I killed them for the sake of the overall situation." Someone was so angry that he laughed and said, "You killed your fellow disciples, and this is still considered the overall situation?" Chu Xiu snorted coldly and said, "You guys are not in the Northern Yen, so I am afraid you do not know what Yuan Tianfeng has done. Most of the trouble was caused by his disciples and grand-disciples. Could be said that it made people gnash their teeth in hatred. By killing them, I can consider it as giving an explanation to the Northern Yen martial arts world and the Great Guangming Temple. This matter will be over. If I did not do this, the Temple of Great Light would use this as an excuse to attack the subduing martial hall, or even the entire Hidden Devil clan. At that time, would the Hidden Devil clan fight or not?" Chu Xiu sighed and said, "Now that the righteous and demonic war has just ended, the Bright Devil clan and the righteous have both suffered losses, it can be said that it is the best time for the Hidden Devil clan to recuperate." In the end, as one of the leaders of the Hidden Devil clan, some people did not look at the overall situation and acted recklessly. They almost provoked a fierce battle between the righteous and the Hidden Devil clan. Everyone, if you say that the Hidden Devil clan is not afraid of the Temple of Great Light and is not afraid to fight with the righteous martial world, then that is fine. I am willing to redeem myself by being the vanguard and fight to the death with the Temple of Great Light. However, on the contrary, if you do not want to fight with the Temple of Great Light, then it proves that I did not do anything wrong. Killing a few idiots who only know how to cause trouble in exchange for the Temple of Great Light to keep the peace and preserve the overall situation, I think it is worth it." Chu Xiu's words were powerful and the expression on his face was even more dignified, as if he had been greatly wronged but was still thinking for the Hidden Devil clan. Everyone present looked at each other and did not know what to say. Although there were many doubtful points in this matter, Chu Xiu had given an explanation. At the moment there was no evidence, so what else could they do? Most importantly, Chu Xiu had poked at their sore spot. That was, no one in the entire Hidden Devil clan wanted to fight with the Temple of Great Light. Just like how the Temple of Great Light did not want to have a fierce battle with the Hidden Devil clan, who was now divided and without a backbone, did not want to have a fierce battle with the Temple of Great Light because there was no benefit. The previous great battle between the righteous and demonic sects concerned the situation between the righteous and demonic sects. Even if there was no benefit for them personally, they had to take action. However, now that they had a choice, no one was willing to take action. Chu Xiu used this point to use the Hidden Devil clan as a deterrent at the Temple of Great Light. Now that he was at the Hidden Devil clan's side, he used the Temple of Great Light as a deterrent, and the effect was quite good. Someone coughed and said, "If that's the case, then Chu can go down first. This time it has been hard on you, Chu. Although you are a junior, it is not easy for you to be able to see the overall situation so clearly." At this moment, everyone began to praise Chu Xiu, which made Mei Qinglian dumbfounded. She had seen everything that Chu Xiu had done. He had offended his superiors and killed his fellow disciples. In the end, it was Chu Xiu who was able to see the overall situation. This made people speechless. Chu Xiu walked down with a magnanimous expression. Wei Shuya also followed and said in a low voice, "Come back with me first." In this secret stronghold, the big shots of the hidden clan had their own individual rooms. After leading Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian in, Wei Shuya stared at Chu Xiu and said in a low voice, "Tell me, did you kill them? I don't believe that you can see the overall situation. If you really did, you wouldn't have killed Xing Situ during the great battle between the righteous and demonic sects in the moon-worshipping cult." Chu Xiu looked around. Wei Shuya scoffed softly and said, "There is a soundproof formation in the room. No one else can hear us." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "I can't hide anything from you, old man Wei. I was the one who killed them. I joined forces with Su Du to kill them." Wei Shuya immediately took a deep breath when he heard this. Even though he had vaguely guessed what had happened, he still could not accept that Yuan Tianfang had died at Chu Xiu's hands. Although Chu Xiu had killed Fang Jinwu in the past, this time was completely different. Although Fang Jinwu was a powerhouse in the true fire spirit refinement realm, he was an old man who was not worth mentioning. Although Yuan Tianfang was not at his peak, he was definitely not old. Most importantly, Yuan Tianfang was one of the big shots of the hidden demons. Regardless of their relationship, they had known each other for such a long time. In the end, he had been killed by Chu Xiu. No matter how one looked at it, it was a little awkward. Even Wei Shuya did not expect Chu Xiu's power to have grown to such a level. Chapter 807. Looking at Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya sighed deeply and said, "You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that if this matter is exposed, there will be no place for you in the Yinma clan?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't care about that. If I don't kill Yuan Tianfang, it won't feel good to be stared at by an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Besides, I've prepared so many excuses, so I'm not afraid of being exposed. The Yinma clan fights their own battles. Yuan Tianfang is dead, and most of his disciples and grand-disciples are dead. Who would take a dead man seriously?" Wei Shuya shook his head helplessly. That was really the case. If Yuan Tianfang was alive, maybe someone would stand on his side for the sake of their friendship in the past, or they just wanted Yuan Tianfang to owe them a favor. But now that Yuan Tianfang was dead, who would stand up for a dead man? People in Jianghu were very realistic, especially those in the Devil Dao who were even more realistic. Next time something like this happens, remember to tell me. I'm not so old that I can't fight. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Elder Wei, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's useless even if you come. There's no one in charge in the Yinma clan. Xing Sidu wanted to kill me, so I killed him. I'm not wrong. Yuan Tianfang came to me to avenge his disciple, but he's not wrong. When will there be an end to revenge? Only when one side is completely dead can this grudge be settled. At the beginning, if there was a person in charge who suppressed this matter, it would be fine, but now there isn't. So even if you go, it's useless. Yuan Tianfang may retreat temporarily, but he'll still be a problem in the future. With all due respect, Elder Wei, you can't suppress Yuan Tianfang." Wei Shuya let out a long sigh. This was also one of the drawbacks of the Yinma clan. Without a person in charge, they couldn't suppress so many Devil Dao villains with different personalities. In fact, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to Chu Xiu. There had been internal killings between the Yinma clan. It was just that the others were not as bold as Chu Xiu, actually daring to even kill a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Forget it, let's put this matter in the past for now. Are you sure your people won't leak the news? Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Elder Wei, don't worry. This time the people who did it were all on our side. The Great Light Temple knows the news, but if they said it, it would mean that they were trying to sow discord within the hidden devil faction. Who would believe them?" Seeing that Chu Xiu had arranged everything properly, Wei Shuya nodded. He was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Wei Shuya pushed open the door and went out to take a look. A disciple said, "Elder Wei, there's a piece of news from the pugilistic world. The lords are asking for you." Wei Shuya was stunned and he subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was at a loss. Was the news leaked? It shouldn't be a problem. What news? The disciple of the hidden devil faction scratched his head and said, "I'm not too sure. It seems that an ancient relic was excavated near the Great Light Temple. It's quite a big deal." Hearing that disciple say this, Chu Xiu was stunned. Could it be that the guys he had sent to excavate Lu Jianghe's treasures had dug up something amazing? Wei Shuya and Chu Xiu immediately returned to the meeting hall. The other big shots of the hidden devil faction who had just left also rushed back. Seeing that Wei Shuya had come, someone immediately handed him a piece of paper, which recorded the big event that had just happened. Chu Xiu went over to take a look. Sure enough, those guys had dug up something amazing. There were a total of 3 places with treasures and 2 parts had been excavated. However, Chu Xiu had said that he would only give them 3 months, so this group of people was a little anxious. They did not dig in the place that Chu Xiu had specified, but started digging in other places. They did not expect to dig up something amazing. What they had dug up was an ancient relic, and it was an ancient relic with an independent space. However, the formation in that place was too strong, and it was not something that the small families could open. So after a while, the place was discovered by the Great Light Temple, and it was taken over by the Great Light Temple. However, there were too many witnesses to this incident. There were so many that almost all the small clans knew the details of this incident. Furthermore, the Great Light Temple could not silence them by killing them. Of course, there was no way to silence them, so the news gradually spread throughout the martial arts world. These small families were not knowledgeable and did not know what the relic represented. However, as the details spread in the pugilistic world, some knowledgeable people had already deduced that the ancient relic was not an ordinary ancient relic. It was a relic from the end of the ancient times, when the Great Calamity occurred. There might even be some secrets about the Great Calamity of the ancient times. In fact, regarding the ancient Great Calamity, ordinary warriors and some warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld had a fundamentally different understanding of it. What ordinary martial artists knew was that in ancient times, a great calamity had descended and nearly destroyed everything. The present world had been rebuilt from the ruins of 10,000 years ago. However, the other big sects and the warriors who stood at the peak of the underworld undoubtedly knew more. They had dug up a lot of information and explored countless secret realms related to it. It could be said that the words ancient great calamity carried many secrets. For example, what kind of calamity was this ancient great calamity? Also, since the big sects and the powerhouses in ancient times had deduced the ancient great calamity, and they even deliberately created a secret box to store precious martial arts, then why did they not find a way to protect themselves but just wait for death? Also, the ruins excavated by the major forces also found a suspicious point, which was that in ancient times, some of the top sects almost did not leave behind any inheritance, and even the sects had disappeared. For example, according to countless ancient records and some fragmented clues, the current underworld people had already deduced that in ancient times, there was a behemoth-like Taoism holy land called the Three Pristines Temple, which controlled the world's 3,000 Taoism sects, and was known as the supreme leader of Taoism. The current Taoist master mansion or the real martial arts sect could not be compared to that kind of existence. In the end, after the ancient great calamity, the Three Pristines Temple completely disappeared, and no relics were passed down, and no inherited martial arts were passed down. This was very unreasonable. Some forces that were much weaker than the Three Pristines Temple could leave behind some relics, but the Three Pristines Temple, which was much stronger than them, was completely annihilated. There was definitely something wrong with this. Moreover, the last time the ruins in Xiaofan Heaven opened, everyone finally found a place related to the Three Pristines Temple, which was a branch of the Three Pristines Temple. Although it was only a branch, it also revealed some news. It seemed that before the ancient great calamity, some people went to a place, and this place was not accessible to everyone. For example, Chu Xiu once found the diary written by a disciple of the ancient Taoism sect, Spirit Treasure Temple, in Xiaofan Heaven. Even in a large Taoism sect like Spirit Treasure Temple, only 2 people were qualified to go to that place, and this was on account of the lives of almost everyone in Spirit Treasure Temple. Chu Xiu was not the only one curious about this place, and almost all the sects and powerhouses that stood at the peak of underworld were curious about this. Therefore, Chu Xiu was sure that once this news came out, countless forces would flock to the secret realm, and it would be impossible for the Great Light Temple to monopolize it. Chu Xiu also asked Lu Jianghe in his mind, "There's such a secret realm relic so close to where you buried the treasure, and you actually didn't discover it?" Lu Jianghe said with a depressed expression, "The Great Light Temple has been located in the bitter north for tens of thousands of years. Who would have thought that there would be a secret realm relic under their own sect, and they actually didn't discover it themselves? Of course I didn't think of this." Chu Xiu was also slightly speechless. Of course, the unluckiest one now was the Great Light Temple. There was such a relic under their own sect's feet, and they actually did not discover it. If the Great Light Temple was the first to discover this place, they could have found a way to completely cover up the secret realm relic, and it would not have been known by the entire underworld. Wei Shiya coughed and said, "Everyone, our Yinma clan has been silent for a long time. During the great battle between the righteous and demonic, only our Yinma clan did not suffer much damage. This time we should stand up for the secret realm relic." Everyone present nodded their heads in agreement. They had no choice but to help the moon-worshipping cult, so they did not use their full strength. This time, exploring the secret realm relic, there was no reason for them not to make a move. Therefore, the discussion this time was very smooth and no one objected. Everyone reached an agreement immediately, and Chu Xiu led the way to the bitter north. In the northern Yen region, the Yinma clan did not have much power base. The Jinwu Hall run by Chu Xiu was considered the largest force, so this time, it was natural that Chu Xiu would take the lead. At the same time, on the Kunlun Mountain in the far west, the mountain range towered into the clouds. The foot of the mountain was covered in snow all day long, and the mountainside was surrounded by clouds and mist, like a fairyland. The strangest thing was that at the top of the mountain, it was spring all year round, and it was a fairyland scene with birds singing and flowers fragrant. It was very out of place. Of course, such a scene only existed on the east side of Kunlun. The west side was gloomy, and it was shrouded in dark clouds and thunder all day long, like purgatory on earth. That was where the Kunlun devil cult used to be, and the East Kunlun mountain range belonged to Elysium. After the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the eminent monks of Subodhi Monastery set up the 6 paths of Buddha reincarnation formation to seal the rootless sacred fire of the Kunlun devil cult. The entire West Kunlun mountain range was set up by countless sects with more than 10 kinds of absolute formations, and it was completely unsuitable for warriors to live in. The East Kunlun Mountains where the Gate of Heaven was located were only separated by a mountain peak from the West Kunlun Mountains. With the strength of the Gate of Heaven sect master Jun Wuxian, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through those great formations and occupy the entire Kunlun Mountains. However, for some unknown reason, the Gate of Heaven had never taken a step into the West Kunlun Mountains even after so many years. Chapter 808. In the East and West Heavens, the East Sea Heavens of Freedom and the Kunlun Heavenly Gate could be said to be the sects with the strongest individual combat power in the world. The master of the East Sea Heavens, Zhong Xinxiu, was elusive and only existed in legends. Although the Heavenly Gate was mysterious, it occasionally appeared in the martial world. At the peak of the East Kunlun, cave mansions were carved on the mountain peaks. There were all kinds of strange runes on them, which looked simple and desolate. At this time in a cave mansion an armored martial artist said emotionally, "Master, the 10-year deadline is not up yet. I should still be the one to step into the martial world this time. Why let this guy go?" This martial artist was one of the 9 great divine generals of the Heavenly Gates, Divine Lord Luo. In the past, when many sects had headed to the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall to besiege Chu Xiu, he had been scared off by the aura that Dugu Weiwa had leaked out, and had directly returned to the Heavenly Gates. Opposite to Divine Lord Luo, a middle-aged martial arts practitioner with loose hair and a mustache said with a faint smile, "Divine Lord Luo, are you still not convinced? Decades ago you lost the key to Chu Kuanga. At that time, everyone said you were incompetent. You even said that you met a madman who didn't care about his life. But this time, you were scared away by a junior and ran back to the Heavenly Gate. What a joke. Dugu Weiwei, why don't you say that you met Ning Xuanji? 500 years have passed. The Kunlun devil cult has long perished." Divine Lord Luo said angrily, "Kuang Shiue, you know nothing. The aura leaking out from that brat's body definitely belongs to Dugu Weiwa. I can forget other things, but you and I have seen the video of Dugu Weiwei slaughtering the 9 divine generals of the Heavenly Gate countless times. How can I forget it?" Kuang Shiue, who was sitting on the stone chair, lazily said with a disdainful smile, "Divine Lord Luo, you've really cultivated so much that your brain has gone blank. Who is Chu Xiu? He is the heir of the hidden devil lineage. What is the identity of the hidden devil lineage? They were the remnants of the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu obtained some of Dugu Weiwei's belongings and they have some of his aura. What's so strange about that?" Divine Lord Luo still wanted to say something, but a voice that wasn't too heavy suddenly came from above. "Shut up." Upon hearing this voice, Kuang Shiue immediately stood up from his stone chair. Divine Lord Luo didn't dare to say anything else. A man who looked to be in his 30s sat at the head of the table. He wore a black robe but his hair was as red as fire. His appearance was very ordinary, so ordinary that one would have almost no impression of him at first glance. However, his entire person was like a star. Even though he had such an ordinary appearance, when placed on his entire body, there was an invisible aura that made one unable to shift their eyes away. This person was the Lord of the Sky Gate, ranked 4th on the sovereign ranking Jun Wuxian. After the disappearance of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji for 500 years, no one would find it wrong to say that Jun Wuxian was the world's second strongest. Staring at Divine Lord Luo, Jun Wuxian said calmly, "I can tolerate some mistakes once, but I can't tolerate it a second time. The first time you met Chu Kuanga. Although this person rose to fame, his temperament is incomparable. I can understand that you suffered a loss at his hands. The second time you met Chu Xiu. This person is the most outstanding figure of the younger generation in the pugilistic world, and he is also the heir of the hidden devil lineage. Just like what Kwang Shiyue said, he might have these things that Dugu Weiwei left behind. I can also understand that. However, a mistake is a mistake. Everyone only has one chance to step into the pugilistic world. If you waste it, don't think about getting a second chance. Last time the key fell into Chu Kuang's hands, but you could still get it back. This time the ancient relic has appeared. There may or may not be a key in it. If it falls into the hands of the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master's abode, do I have to do it myself? I can't do it a third time. This time let Kwang Shiyue go. You are responsible for strengthening the seal that he is in charge of. Jun Wuxian's voice was very calm, as if he was just describing a very ordinary matter. There was no anger or any emotion in his voice. However, it was this calm tone that made Divine Lord Luo dare not say a word. He could only nod and bow in agreement. After walking out of the cave, Kwang Shiyue chuckled at Divine Lord Luo and said, "Brother Luo, I have been sleeping a little too much recently. My seal has not been strengthened for a while. After you take over, you will have to put in more effort. Don't worry, if I see Chu Xiu again, I will help you see what it is that scared you so much." Kwang Shiyue. Divine Lord Luo shouted angrily. However, the next moment, Kwang Shiyue's body moved like a stream of light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The Divine General of Tianmen stepped into the Jianghu once again. This time, the matter of the ruins involved almost all the top sects in the Jianghu. At that moment, more than 10 miles from the foot of the mountain of the Great Light Temple, the place had already been taken over by the Great Light Temple. The small forces that had been digging for the treasures had all hurriedly retreated when they saw that the matter had become too big. Although they were greedy and curious about what was in the ruins, they also knew that if they tried to take something that did not belong to them, they would die a terrible death. Based on their strength, they could not even break the formation. They had dug a 300-meter wide hole in the ground, which was emitting waves of dim light. There was a stone tablet engraved with dense ancient characters. Although some of them were broken, the meaning of the characters could still be read. This place was an independent space during the ancient age. It was rich in resources, so it was occupied by all the major forces. They all had their own sects in it. Moreover, before the arrival of the Ancient Age disaster, the major forces had once discussed how to survive the Ancient Age disaster. This was also the reason why everyone suspected that there was a secret regarding the Ancient Age disaster. At that moment, Su Yun and Su Yen stood at the side of the ruins. Among them, there were several warriors breaking the formation. These warriors were not from the Great Light Temple, but from the Black Martial Sect, one of the four spirits. The warriors from the Black Martial Sect were good at all kinds of machinery, formation puppets, and other miscellaneous things. This time they had been invited by the Great Light Temple. The Great Light Temple was really not good at breaking this kind of ancient formation. Most importantly, once it was forcefully broken, the Great Light Temple was afraid that some accident would happen and destroy the space. After experiencing the Ancient Age disaster, such an independent space was actually extremely fragile. Once there was any damage, the entire space might collapse completely. When that happened, they would not be able to get anything. "Master Puyang, how much longer do we need to break the formation?" Su Yen asked anxiously. At that moment, the news had already spread. The longer they delayed, the more people would come. Speaking of which, the Great Light Temple felt very aggrieved. In the end, such a precious ancient ruin had been under the feet of the Great Light Temple for tens of thousands of years and had not been discovered by anyone. This was a joke. In the end, they had finally discovered it, but it was discovered by outsiders. Su Yen could even imagine that a group of martial artists would definitely swarm over, and the Great Light Temple would not be able to stop them. The person who broke the formation was Black Martial Sect's Elder Puyang Yi. He was one of the rare formation grandmasters in the martial world. Hearing that, he leaped up from below and shook his head. It's easy to break the formation. However, this ruin has already been attacked by the Ancient Age disaster and is slightly fragile. Just breaking the formation might cause problems in this space. Therefore, I have to first strengthen the formation before breaking it. I reckon that it will take 1 or 2 days. Moreover, this ruin is similar to the ruins that were discovered before. Powerful martial artists at the mysterious heaven and earth realm probably won't be able to enter. At most, it can only accommodate powerful martial artists at the true fire refinement realm. Su Yun nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, Master Puyang." Puyang Yi hurriedly said, "You flatter me. Being able to break an ancient formation like this is very beneficial to my understanding of formations. I should be the one thanking the Great Light Temple." Su Yun said to Su Yen, who was beside him. Don't worry. It's useless even if you worry. With such an ancient ruin appearing, even if those people use their fastest speed, even if they use some trump card or secret technique, they will still rush over. They haven't shown up yet because the ruin hasn't been completely opened. Su Yen said in shock. Senior brother, you mean that they've all arrived? Su Yun looked in a direction and said calmly, of course they've arrived and there are quite a few of them. However, don't worry. What should be ours will be ours. We'll fight for it with our strength. The Great Light Temple is not afraid of anyone. Master Su Yun is indeed domineering. A mocking voice rang out. Demonic clouds surged in the distance. Dong Huang Tai, the moon-worshipping cult saintess, and 3 moon-worshipping cult god magi had arrived together. This was almost 1/3 of the entire moon-worshipping cult strength. Seeing Dong Huang Tai arrive, Su Yen immediately snorted coldly. For both sides that had just finished the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, it would be strange if Su Yen treated the other party nicely. Dong Huang Tai said with a faint smile, it seems like everyone doesn't welcome me? Su Yun said calmly, your moon-worshipping cult's injuries have all healed? Last time, more than half of the 9 god magi died. This time, the few behind you are all newly selected? Aren't you afraid that they will also die in the ruin and your moon-worshipping cult won't even be able to gather 9 god magi? During the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths, Su Yun was the only one who was qualified to be Dong Huang Tai's opponent. Only he would dare to say such words to Dong Huang Tai. As for the 3 god magi that Dong Huang Tai brought with him, other than Shangue, the rest had come in later. What Su Yun said was not wrong. Dong Huang Tai laughed coldly and said, Master Su Yun, you better think about whether your Great Light Temple can gather the first seats of the 6 martial academies. You can't even protect the ruin you discovered at your own doorstep. Your Great Light Temple is going to be a joke this time. Chapter 809. Just as Dong Huang Tai and Su Yun were exchanging meaningless words, Chu Xiu and the rest of the Hidden Devil clan also arrived. Because it was just in time for the Hidden Devil clan's meeting, including Wei Shuya, the Hidden Devil clan sent 4 true Fire Spirit Refinement Realm cultivators. Apart from Wei Shuya, one of them was the Scarlet Devil Sect Master, Evil Lord Scarlet Moon Qin Chaoxian. This person was a tall middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. Moreover, he had a square face and a righteous expression. Just by looking at his appearance, people would believe that he was a hero of the righteous path. It was very difficult to imagine that he was actually the sect master of the Crimson Devil sect. The other person was an old man wearing a black Taoist robe. He was Earth Devil magician Yu Moya. When Mei Qinglian introduced him to Chu Xiu, she said that he was a famous grave-digging demon. 90% of his cultivation came from digging graves. In his life, he had dug up the tombs of countless ancient experts and ancestors of some large sections. He had collected all kinds of martial arts. It was said that his biggest dream was to dig up the Storm Sword tomb. It was a huge tomb that hid countless strong sword cultivators. Of course, Yu Moya was just thinking about it. If he did it in reality, he would be looking for death. The last person was an old man who was dressed sloppily and wore colorful clothes. He did not look like someone from the Central Plains. He was Ghost Dragon Cave Master Wuma Mermaid. He was one of the most orthodox disciples of the Kunlun Devil cult. He was the disciple of a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult in West Chu. Later on, when the Kunlun Devil cult was destroyed, the branch in West Chu withstood the pressure. However, it changed its name and dared not say that it was a branch of the Kunlun Devil cult anymore. Instead, it changed its name to Ghost Dragon Cave, which was Wuma Mermaid's branch. Seeing so many people from the Hidden Devil clan, Su Yen could not help but frown. However, Su Yun did not pay attention to the others. He only looked deeply at Chu Xiu. Su Du did not come this time. He was in seclusion in the Great Light Temple. The battle with Yuan Tianfang was also beneficial to Su Du, so he was also in seclusion to digest the experience brought to him by that battle. However, before he went into seclusion, Su Du came to see him personally and told him about Chu Xiu. From Su Du's point of view, the entire Hidden Devil clan was nothing to worry about. They were already at the end of their rope. However, Chu Xiu's existence was more threatening than the entire Yinma clan. His existence was equivalent to the morning sun rising in the east. When Chu Xiu really stood at the peak like the morning sun, would the Jianghu welcome another scene of demonic power that covered the sky? Su Du rarely evaluated a person seriously. Hence, this was the first time Su Yun had taken Chu Xiu seriously. He had never paid much attention to this junior martial artist who had risen to fame in the pugilistic world. Feeling that Su Yun was staring at him, Chu Xiu felt a little uneasy. It did not feel good to be stared at by a true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouse. Chu Xiu thought that Su Yun was weighing whether or not he should reveal that he and Su Du had joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfeng. However, Chu Xiu was not afraid. This matter had already passed. Su Du had already advanced to the 10th powerhouse on the Wind Cloud list. If the Great Light Temple revealed the truth, it would be a slap in the face. Why didn't you refute it back then? Moreover, many parties were about to enter the ruins to fight for it. Since Su Yun had said this, Chu Xiu could say that Su Yun was deliberately provoking them. At that moment, Dong Huang Tai saw that the Hidden Devil clan had arrived. He greeted them and breathed a sigh of relief. Ever since the last great battle between the Righteous Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan, the relationship between the Bright Devil clan and the Moon-worshipping clan had eased a lot. Both sides also knew that although they were not of one mind, only the other party could save people in the face of a life-or-death crisis. As the Bright Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan appeared at the same time, the forces that had been hiding in the dark stopped hiding and appeared one after another. The three main Taoist sects arrived at almost the same time. The sect leader of the real martial arts sect, Sage Xianchen Lu Changlu, had arrived with several martial Dao masters. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent the leader of the Sixth Temple Guardian Sage, Chang Yunzi, along with Chunyang Dao sect's little martial uncle, Shi Yunzi, and several old Taoists. The others could not help but secretly shake their heads when they saw that the people from Chunyang Dao sect had white hair, except for Shi Yunzi. The Chunyang Dao sect had a strong foundation and had a lot of powerhouses. However, they were all from the previous generation or even the generation before that. In the past few decades, how many young people from the Chunyang Dao sect had come up with? Apart from Shi Yunzi, there was almost no one else. The strength of a sect could not be supported by one person. The Chunyang Dao sect had indeed declined. The current generation was still doing well, but the next generation was really in danger. The people from Longhu Mountain were Thunder God, Xian Longzi and Zhang Qingzhen. Even in Longhu Mountain, many people thought that Xian Longzi was a lunatic. However, it was undeniable that his talent was top-notch in the Taoist Master Mansion. After not seeing him for a while, he had actually stepped into the true fire spiritual refinement state too. This attracted everyone's attention. Seeing the people from the Taoist Master Mansion, Dong Huang Tai could not help but sneer. The people from the Taoist Master Mansion speak like a fart. Who was the one who said that they would seal the mountain for a year? Xian Longzi snorted. Now that Qingzhen and I have been expelled from the Taoist Master Mansion, we are naturally not considered as people of the Taoist Master Mansion. Can't we? Dong Huang Tai was instantly speechless, but there was nothing he could do. A promise would only be kept if it was necessary. Back then, the Taoist Master Mansion had indeed said that they would seal the mountain for a year. In fact, that was also a tacit understanding between Yi Xiaonan and the old Taoist Master. Neither Yi Xiaonan nor the old Taoist Master wanted to kill him. In the end, Yi Xiaonan won. Therefore, sealing the mountain for a year actually meant that the Taoist Master Mansion would no longer care about the moon-worshipping cult, and the moon-worshipping cult would not go all out to kill the Taoist Master Mansion. Both sides had a tacit understanding to avoid mutual destruction. If Yi Xiaonan had really displayed the strength that Dugu Weiwei had, which could rival the martial arts world, then the old Taoist Master would probably have fought him to the death. Therefore, the Taoist Master Mansion had sealed the mountain for a year because they did not care about the moon-worshipping cult. Now that such an important relic had appeared, how could the Taoist Master Mansion just watch from the sidelines? Although Xian Longzi's excuse was a bit ridiculous, it made sense. As long as he waited until the matter was over, he would be taken back by the Taoist Master Mansion. After the three great Taoist sects, another large Buddhist sect, the Subodhi Monastery, also sent people. Although the Subodhi Monastery had also made a vow to seal the mountain for a year, Dragon Tiger Mountain did not take it seriously, let alone the Subodhi Monastery. Therefore, Dong Huang Tai did not say much this time. The Subodhi Monastery had sent an old monk named Jingchan Jizong. He only wore a simple yellow monk robe and was barefooted, but no one dared to look down on him. The Chunyang Dao sect had sent old Taoist priests, which was a sign of weakness to others. However, no one dared to look down on the old monks sent by the Subodhi Monastery. Everyone knew that the older the monks of the Subodhi Monastery were, the more terrifying they were. Their young disciples would not even appear in the pugilistic world. Jingchan Jizong greeted Su Yun in slightly choppy Central Plains Chinese before standing there motionlessly. However, Chu Xiu had a feeling that when Jingchan Jizong swept his gaze at him, it was filled with intense killing intent. That killing intent was released inadvertently, and Chu Xiu could guarantee that it was only targeted at him. However, on careful thought, Chu Xiu realized that he had a grudge with the Great Radiance Monastery, but he really had no grudge with the Subodhi Monastery. He had never even seen a disciple of the Subodhi Monastery. Why did the other party want to kill him? Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe, "Did you sense that old monk's killing intent just now?" Chu Xiu was worried that he had sensed wrongly. Had he been too sensitive recently? Lu Jianghe's psyche was attached to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu could sense it, he should be able to sense it as well. Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Your senses are right. That old monk does want to kill you. Chu Xiu, you have to be careful. Although the Great Radiance Monastery is famous in the pugilistic world, the truly terrifying ones are the old monks of the Subodhi Monastery. They are typical people who don't talk much. Ordinary people can't accept their ascetic life. Therefore, none of the people who came out of the Subodhi Monastery are normal." Chu Xiu nodded gently. He did not look at Jingchan Jizong, but a hint of vigilance rose in his heart as he paid attention to the old monk. At that moment, Lu Fengxian, who was standing next to Chu Xiu, felt that something was wrong with Chu Xiu. He could not help but ask, "Brother Chu, what's wrong?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's nothing, Brother Lu. Be careful when you enter later. Don't fight head-on." Lu Fengxian had stepped into the martial Dao realm. Although he did not belong to any sect, he could enter the ruins because of his relationship with Chu Xiu. Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "I can still run if I can't beat them. It's not a shameful thing." To be honest, Lu Fengxian did not care much about his reputation. Right at this moment, another group of people came over. Chu Xiu's gaze was immediately attracted over because this time, he actually saw a familiar person. There were only two people this time. One of them was a middle-aged man wearing a black robe with a lifelike azure dragon embroidered on it. This person carried a bone-chilling killing intent. As soon as he appeared, it was as if the temperature of the entire place had dropped by a few degrees. The most eye-catching thing was his eyes, which were filled with incomparable arrogance and madness. This person was the head of the Blue Dragon Society, Crescent Green Dragon, Bu Tianan, who was ranked 7th on the leaderboard. He was the world's #1 killer, the #1 assassin, and an out-and-out lunatic. At that moment, Chu Xiu's attention was not on Bu Tianan, but on the person behind him. The person behind Bu Tianan was the former Blue Dragon Society's Northern Yin Heavenly Sin branch leader, Duan Tianlang, who had tricked Chu Xiu and chased him for thousands of miles. Chapter 8:10. Chu Xiu was not a very magnanimous person. On the contrary, he was actually a very vengeful person. Along the way there were very few people who could scheme against Chu Xiu so miserably, and Duan Tianlang was one of them. The former Heavenly Sin branch master was indeed a character. He could be described as vicious and his means were strange. In his eyes, no one was as important as his own future, so no matter how much potential Chu Xiu showed, he would use Chu Xiu as bait to cheat the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Of course, this person might not necessarily be Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu did not join the Heavenly Sin branch, then this person would be Tang Ye. But in the end, Chu Xiu had never forgotten about this matter, but Duan Tianlang was far away in the Blue Dragon Society, so he couldn't find trouble with the other party. And last time, Chu Xiu also heard from Mu Zi that this Duan Tianlang was quite capable. As soon as he stepped into the real pellet state, he became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. Although the ranking of the 7 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society did not represent their strength, it could represent their status in the Blue Dragon Society. Duan Tianlang became one of the 5 dragon heads, and this time when the ruins opened, Bu Tianan did not bring anyone, but he brought Duan Tianlang. This could already explain Duan Tianlang's status. To be precise, it was his position in Bu Tianan's heart. Chu Xiu smiled at Duan Tianlang and said, "Sir Branch Master, I don't know if you still remember me?" Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth and said, "Of course I remember, even if you turn into ashes I will remember." On the surface Duan Tianlang was gritting his teeth, but in fact, there was a trace of horror in the depths of his eyes. Of course Duan Tianlang would not forget Chu Xiu. It should be said that he had never forgotten Chu Xiu. He was even able to reach this step thanks to Chu Xiu. Although Duan Tianlang had failed to kill Chu Xiu, he managed to kill a Hall Master of the White Tiger Hall and successfully returned to the Azure Dragon Society's headquarters. Not only that, he even managed to sneak into Bu Tiannan's side. At that time, Duan Tianlang didn't take Chu Xiu seriously. In his opinion, Chu Xiu was just a small character who took his Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon. Although it was a pity to lose the Blood Jade Exquisite Dragon, It was a blessing in disguise to be able to return to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. However, as Chu Xiu became more and more famous in the pugilistic world, Duan Tianlang became anxious when he heard that he was the successor of the Hidden Devil faction. Chu Xiu was not dead and he had reached this point. He would definitely seek revenge in the future. So under this pressure, Duan Tianlang cultivated harder and harder, and he even tried his best to cater to Butianan. In the end, he also reached the real pellet state, and he also became one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. However, his results were nothing compared to Chu Xiu's. Even the current Chu Xiu could kill the existence of the real fire spirit refinement state. He was no longer on the same level as Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang was a ruthless person who judged others by himself. He would naturally bring Chu Xiu into himself, thinking that Chu Xiu would definitely come to him for revenge. Of course he was right. Chu Xiu was even more vicious and merciless than he had imagined. So over the years, Duan Tianlang had even been living in fear. One could imagine how much pressure Chu Xiu brought to him. Butianan glanced at Chu Xiu, then at Duan Tianlang. He suddenly smiled and said, "This kid is the one you betrayed back then. You didn't expect him to be stronger than you now?" Some of the details of Chu Xiu's early years had been revealed by Wind-Sweeping Tower. His experience as an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society naturally couldn't be hidden from others. At this time, hearing Butianan's words, Duan Tianlang quickly smiled awkwardly and said, "You also know that this matter?" However, before Duan Tianlang's words were finished, he was interrupted by Butianan. Butianan looked straight at Chu Xiu and said, "Chu Xiu, you used to be a member of the Blue Dragon Society. I know you feel wronged. How about this, I kill Duan Tianlang and you join the Blue Dragon Society. I will give you the position of the second dragon head. What do you think?" Duan Tianlang was so scared that his face instantly turned pale. He couldn't tell whether what Butianan said was true or just a joke. Even though he had served Butianan for a long time, he still couldn't figure out what was going on in his head. At this time, Wei Shuya said with a gloomy look, "Butianan, you're very bold to poach people from the Hidden Devil clan." Butianan laughed and said, "Old Wei, don't be angry. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. This kid has no chance of developing in your Hidden Devil clan. A bunch of old people are about to die, yet they still refuse to give up their positions. Look at how generous I am. I directly gave him the position of the second dragon head." This big dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society really didn't know how to speak. He was really arrogant. After hearing his words, not only Wei Shuya, but Qin Chaoxian and the other 2 from the Scarlet Drill Devil sect also had a dark expression on their faces. So in their Hidden Devil clan, they were all old farts who didn't want to give up their positions to the young? Before Wei Shuya and the others could say anything, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in? Let's not talk about whether I'm a good bird or not. Big Dragon Head, you're not a good piece of wood." This Duan Tianlang betrayed his subordinates and is ruthless. He used such a person and put him in an important position. This will make many of our brothers feel bitterly disappointed. Big Dragon Head is a good bird that chooses a good tree to nest in. It will be hard to convince others. Moreover, as far as I know, the second dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society, Duanwu Qianshan, has been with you for a lifetime. He has done his best to stabilize the internal affairs of the Blue Dragon Society for you. In the end, you want to kick him down with just one sentence and let me be the second dragon head. But who knows if you won't easily kick me down next time and let someone else be the second dragon head. As soon as Chu Xiu said this, Bu Tiannan's face instantly darkened. Although that extreme killing intent was invisible and intangible, it made Bu Tiannan feel like a bitingly cold winter. There was even water vapor condensing around Bu Tiannan. However, the next moment, that killing intent disappeared without a trace. Bu Tiannan suddenly laughed and said, "Boy, you're very interesting. But you have to think carefully. If you refuse me this time, then you have no fate with the Blue Dragon Society anymore. Duan Tianlang is one of the 5 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. If you want to kill him, you have to go through me first. In short, if you kill him, I will kill you. In this life, you won't have a chance to take revenge." Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "No, I feel that I have a fate with the Blue Dragon Society." Bu Tiannan didn't say anything. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Duan Tianlang, who was pale with fright. He slapped Duan Tianlang and made him stagger. He scolded, "Trash. I was just joking. Look at you. You're really embarrassing me." Duan Tianlang covered his head. He was angry but didn't dare to say anything. It should be said that he didn't even dare to be angry. How could he know if Bu Tiannan was serious or just joking? In the past, this big dragon head started to kill people while laughing. This kind of thing was not uncommon. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and carefully looked at Bu Tiannan. To be honest, this person was also a legendary figure in the Jianghu. It was definitely not easy for him to go from a small assassin to where he was today. However, Bu Tiannan's personality was somewhat unpredictable. Using a person like Duan Tianlang could be considered to be a poor judgment of people. The second dragon head, Duanmu Qianshan, who had followed him for a lifetime and was conscientious, could be considered to be cold-hearted. Back then, because of the destruction of the Heavenly Sin branch, he dared to go to the Great Light Temple alone to demand an explanation. He even dared to make a move. He could be considered to be extremely crazy. But today Chu Xiu saw Bu Tiannan's behavior. He was simply temperamental. Such a person was indeed worthy of being called a madman. If he wanted to kill Duan Tianlang, he had to think of a way to avoid this person. The crowd waited for a few more hours. The other sects also arrived one after another. Among the 5 major sword sects, Shin Baochen, who had forgotten about the sword hut, and Yan Ji, who had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm, came together. In the battle of the righteous and demonic path on floating Jade Mountain, after Yan Ji lost the murderous weapon, the Abyss, his cultivation actually rose and unexpectedly stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm. On the other hand, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa's Villa Master, Qing Tingshan, came. He carried a seemingly ordinary iron box on his back, but it definitely contained the treasured weapons of the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. The Hidden Sword Mountain Villa had actually gone to extremes these past few years. They placed too much emphasis on swords and neglected people. They did not know that for warriors, swords were only weapons that were held in their hands. However, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa had put the cart before the horse. On the West Chu side, Qin Qing Di came alone. This time he did not bring Xie Xiao Lu. The scale of this relic was no longer suitable for warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm to explore. Only martial masters had the right to enter. Far away in the South Sea, the low-profile the 6th demon sect sent its sect master Yi Buishuan in person. When he saw Dong Huang Tai Wei Shuya and the others from the Hidden Devil clan, he greeted them. The 6th demon sect was neither a bright devil nor a hidden devil. Both sides were able to get along well. Even the northern Yin side had an important figure. Eastern Mountain Army's great general, Quang Tu Beigong Bailey. On the 9 great clans side, the Gao Ping Lu clan and Sun clan's ancestor came with a few clansmen. Compared to them, the Shangshuaying clan had actually sent very few people. However, their strength was great. It was actually Ing Sanshu from the Ing clan and Ing Bailu. The current number 1 on the world list, Ing Sanshu, although he looked like an ordinary middle-aged man without the slightest expression, only those who were from the same era as him knew how terrifying Ing Sanshu was. In the past, when he was ranked on the Longhu list, he was known to be invincible below the Grand Master. He was even more prestigious than Zhang Qingzhen of this generation. Of course, that was also because there were no monsters like Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and Fang Qishao in his generation. When Ing Sanshu stepped into the real pellet state and was ranked on the world list, he was known to be invincible below the true fire spirit refinement state. There were only 3 defeats in his life, so he was also known as Ing Sanshu. Although this person had not fought for more than 20 years, his power was still there. Even with Su Yun's strength, who had just experienced the war between the righteous and demonic factions, Feng Manlu did not dare to rank him above Ing Sanshu. Chapter 8:11. More than 10 practitioners of the spiritual refinement state of true fire had gathered around the ruins. This scale was second only to the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. The warriors of the Xuanwu Gate responsible for breaking the formation felt pressured. Wei Shuya frowned slightly. After the great battle, he thought that the Diabolists could finally raise their heads. Only now did he understand that the only one who could raise their heads was the moon-worshipping sect, because they had a strong practitioner like Yi Xiaonan. Although the Yinma clan had not suffered any damage, their strength was still there. Among the practitioners of the Jianghu who kept coming, there were very few who belonged to the Diabolists. Most of them were from the righteous path. The gap between the righteous and demonic paths was still very large. At that moment, another group of people from the devil path finally arrived. However, the people from the Yinma clan didn't have any good expressions towards them. In fact, their attitude was even worse than the people from the righteous path because they were from the evil extreme sect. Compared to enemies, traitors were certainly more hateful. Only 2 people from the omniscient sect came. One was Yi Tianxia, and the other was the leader of the omniscient sect, evil King Xing Beixian. In fact, in the Jianghu, especially in the eyes of other Diabolist sects, the omniscient sect did not have a good reputation. In their eyes, the omniscient sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun devil cult. Moreover, the omniscient sect was far away in the far north. Under the light of Buddha of the Great Light Temple, they could only be subservient and lick the moon-worshipping sect. They had no integrity or dignity at all. However, this evil king Xing Beixian had a rather good appearance. It was the exact opposite of the omniscient sect. Although Xing Beixian was not young, he still retained the appearance of a middle-aged man in his 40s. Most importantly, he was very handsome. When he was young, he was as handsome as Lu Fengxian, Ying Bailu and the others. Even though he was older now, he had a mature charm. Lord Dong Huang, long time no see. Xing Beixian greeted Dong Huang Tai with a smile. However, Dong Huang Tai's reaction was extremely cold. He only nodded slightly. Dong Huang Tai actually looked down on the evil Zenith sect. They were too good at playing tricks. The omniscient sect had indeed contributed to the last war between the righteous and demonic paths. They had sent many warriors, and even the heir of the omniscient sect, Yi Tianxia, had been sent to West Chu. However, Xing Beixian had not come. The omniscient sect was clearly not going to bet everything on the moon-worshipping sect. Of course, there was nothing wrong with this. After all, there were very few people in the Jianghu who would stake everything on a single throw. It was understandable that the evil Pole sect would hold back, but it wouldn't be easy for them to do so. Xing Beixian did not mind Dong Huang Tai's attitude. He only smiled faintly, appearing extremely gentlemanly. However, Qin Chaoxian from the Crimson Demonic sect sneered, "Xing Beixian, you're quite bold to bring out your successor who hasn't reached the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Aren't you afraid that he'll die in there?" Xing Beixian smiled and said, "Everyone has their own fate. How can the younger generation grow without going through trials and tribulations? You and I went through life and death when we were young. Which danger is not more dangerous than now? The elites on the Longhu list have already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It's a bit late for our omniscient sect's disciples to enter the Jianghu. If we don't work hard to catch up, how can we succeed?" Yi Tianxia, who was standing next to Xing Beixian, snorted and said, "Sect Master, if you hadn't suppressed me for so long, I'm afraid I would have reached the real pellet state long ago. I really don't care about the so-called Longhu list. Fang Qishao has been surpassed by several people one after another. What's the point of being the first on the Longhu list? The next time I'm on the list, I won't appear on the Longhu list, but the Fengyun list." Chu Xiu squinted at Yi Tianxia. This guy is actually a little cute, silly and cute. Nowadays there aren't many people who are so blindly confident. He remembered that Yi Tianxia, as the trump card secretly cultivated by the omniscient sect, was indeed amazing when he first appeared. He cultivated the beastkin technique as a human and even refined the blood dragon's Naiden. It was a pity that there were too many monsters in this generation of the Jianghu. Yi Tianxia's original goal was Zhang Qingzhen, but what happened in the end? Zhang Qingzhen had long left him in the dust. Later, Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and others also stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm one after another, leaving him far behind. As a result, Yi Tianxia still looked down on Fang Qishao and wanted to step directly into the Fengyun list. This was a bit whimsical. On this generation's Longhu list, there were only 3 people who could enter the Fengyun list after leaving the Longhu list: Zhang Qingzhen, Chu Xiu, and Zhong Xian. Even Ying Bailu couldn't do this. It was extremely difficult for Yi Tianxia, who had just suffered a setback in the fluttering snow city in the extreme north, to do this. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came. "The Longhu list's number 1 is boring? I also think this thing is boring, so I'll give it to you." Everyone looked into the distance and saw Sword King City's true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse, Jianan King, Dugu Li, coming with Fang Qishao. Looking at the aura on Fang Qishao at this time, he had also stepped into the real pellet state. Chu Xiu was not surprised that Fang Qishao had stepped into the real pellet state. His talent and potential were not weaker than Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu. He was surpassed by them one after another. In addition to this guy being a bit lazy, it was more of a coincidence. If there was no stimulation from the Yu Palace, probably Lu Fengxian and Ying Bailu wouldn't have broken through so quickly. They would have to wait until the conditions were right. The Sword Awakening Salamander of Sword King City was casually carried on his shoulder by Fang Qishao. He squinted at Yi Tianxia and sneered, "Little Che, do you really think those on the Longhu list are all vegetarians? I let Ying Bailu and the others break through first. That's me being modest. If you're not convinced, how about we fight now?" Yi Tianxia's face turned white and red. Just now he was still looking down on Fang Qishao, but in the blink of an eye, Fang Qishao had already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. This was quite a slap in the face. However, for the sake of his face, Yi Tianxia still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Xing Beixian. He chuckled and said, "Young hero Fang, don't mind it. My disciple is young and impetuous. He doesn't know the rules." Since Xing Beixian said so, Fang Qishao didn't continue to embarrass Yi Tianxia. He just leaned over to Chu Xiu and winked. "What I hate the most in my life is those who are more handsome than me. How can someone be so handsome at this age?" Lu Fengxian came over and said, "Brother Fang, are you talking about me?" Fang Qishao pushed Lu Fengxian aside with a depressed expression. "It's none of your business." Chu Xiu ignored Fang Qishao's tricks. He just asked curiously, "You just stepped into the real pellet state, don't you need to retreat for a period of time? Sword King City just let you out?" Fang Qishao shrugged and said, "It's a matter of time, why do I need to retreat? Those old guys are probably afraid that the people behind me will surpass me again, so they can't wait to pull me out for a walk." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Qishao found that his choice of words seemed to be a little wrong. "What do you mean by walk? Walk by myself?" Just as he wanted to change his words, Du Guli said with a gloomy face, "Come back. How can you be so impatient?" Fang Qishao shrugged helplessly and had to return to Du Guli's side obediently. In Sword King City, this person was the oldest and had the worst temper. Fang Qishao dared to provoke others, but he really didn't dare to provoke Du Guli. Of course, Du Guli asked Fang Qishao to come over not only to let him be more serious, but he also didn't want to see Fang Qishao get too close to Chu Xiu. After all, Chu Xiu was a demonic cultivator, and the righteous and demonic cultivators were irreconcilable. Although Sword King City's position was not as firm as Great Light Temple or Chunyang Dao sect, they couldn't let their disciples join the demonic cultivators. At this time, everyone who should be here had arrived. Everyone was waiting for the people of Xuanwu Gate to completely open the array. Pu Yangyi seized the opportunity and busied himself for a few more hours. Finally, the formation below blossomed with a dazzling radiance. He let out a long breath and said, "It's finally done. Everyone can enter." Just at this moment, an extremely powerful aura rapidly descended from the distance. A middle-aged cultivator wearing a tiger skin cloak with a trace of evilness on his face descended from the sky. He stood in the middle of the crowd in an extremely high-profile manner. After looking around, he chuckled and said, "Fortunately, I made it in time. It doesn't matter if it's meat or soup, it has to be hot." Everyone present frowned because they felt that this person was a bit unfamiliar. However, the aura on his body was extremely powerful. Even Dong Huang Tai wouldn't underestimate him. However, there were only a few top powerhouses in the Jianghu. Who was this person who had suddenly appeared? Su Yun said in a deep voice, "May I ask who this benefactor is?" The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Well said, I am Kuang Shiyue from Elysium." As soon as they heard the words, Elysium, everyone present immediately fell into a brief silence. Compared to other forces, Elysium was very troublesome. Any random divine general from Elysium was an expert among experts. They didn't expect that the appearance of this relic would actually alarm Elysium, a force that hadn't been in the Jianghu for a long time. It wasn't a good thing that such a strong competitor had come. At this time, Kuang Shiyue looked around and suddenly saw Chu Xiu. He laughed loudly and unexpectedly grabbed towards Chu Xiu without any warning. "Was it you who scared off Divine Lord Luo last time? I want to see what evil things you have on you. After I take them back, I'll have a good laugh at that guy." No one expected that Kuang Shiyue would make a move on such an occasion. Instantly, Chu Xiu felt as if he was being stared at by a terrifying existence. Devil Qi erupted from his body and blood shadows swirled around. He was ready to use all his strength to resist. However, at this time, Wei Shuya had already arrived in front of Chu Xiu. He snorted coldly and waved one hand. A giant Devil Qi hand descended from the sky and blocked Kuang Shiyue's grab. "So what if you're a divine general of Elysium? Do you think my hidden devil lineage is dead?" Chapter 8:12. Kuang Shiyue was absolutely unscrupulous. He actually dared to attack Chu Xiu in front of so many big shots of the hidden devil bloodline. Regardless of how other big shots of Yinma branch thought of Chu Xiu belonged to Yinma branch. Even though Kuang Shiyue was an immortal general of Elysium branch, they couldn't let Kuang Shiyue kill Chu Xiu in front of the public. The Crimson Drill Devil sect's Qin Chaoxian spoke coldly as well. "Kuang Shiyue, do you really think that your heaven path is the #1 sect in the world? Even if my Yinma clan is not the Kunlun devil cult of the past, we are not people that you can humiliate at will. In an instant, the 4 true fire spirit refinement realm experts of the Yinma clan all looked as if they were ready to fight. Even Dong Huang Tai, who was at the side, laughed coldly and said, "You wouldn't have known if you hadn't seen them. The people of the heavenly gates are indeed arrogant and overbearing. Whose power are you relying on? Jun Wuxian? There's not much of a difference between the 4th and 5th on the sovereign ranking." Although Kuang Shiyue was now targeting Chu Xiu, who was from the hidden devil bloodline, Dong Huang Tai already had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Moreover, he really could not bear to see people from Elysium being so arrogant. The righteous and demonic wars had just ended. Their moon-worshipping cult had fought against all the heroes of the righteous path, and Yi Xiaonan had fought several powerhouses alone without being defeated, securing the 5th position on the sovereign list. Even the moon-worshipping cult wasn't this arrogant, so why was the heavenly gate so arrogant? Moreover, in the eyes of Dong Huang Tai, apart from being inferior to the legendary Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, his sect master might be qualified to fight against Zhong Xinxiu of Freedom Sky and Jun Wuxian of Elysium. Seeing that he had provoked public anger, Kuang Shiyue's face didn't show any timidity, embarrassment, or anger. He just laughed twice. "Tiske, you guys really don't have a sense of humor. It was just a joke. Did you take it seriously?" Kuang Shiyue's performance was very real, but only Chu Xiu knew that he had used all his strength in that grab just now. However, after hearing Kuang Xiyue's words, no one present wanted to fight with him right now. They could only snort coldly and give up for the time being. Chu Xiu retreated behind Wei Shuya, but his eyes were fixed on Kuang Shiyue. They were both Heavenly Gate divine generals, but Kuang Shiyue and Divine Lord Luo gave off a completely different feeling. Immortal Lord Luo's character was tyrannical and unreasonable. He did not take anyone seriously and looked down on everyone as though they were ants. That was why he had barged into the Guanzhong torture room, killed Guan Xiu, and dug up Chu Kuang's mausoleum. However, Kuang Shiyue had a neurotic look and was moody. No one could figure out what he was thinking. Just like what happened just now, even if he really had some ulterior motives towards Chu Xiu, a normal person would not make a move in front of the warriors of the Yinma clan. However, Kuang Shiyue had done so. He was also a madman who did not consider the consequences at all. Chu Xiu rubbed his head. Being targeted by such a person was much more troublesome than facing Yuan Tianfang, who always wanted to take revenge on him. This was because Chu Xiu clearly knew what Yuan Tianfang wanted and what he was afraid of. However, he could not figure out what Kuang Shiyue was thinking. Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe in his mind, "By the way, how much do you know about the Heavenly Gate? What do you think the Heavenly Gate is?" "A bunch of good-for-nothings," Lu Jianghe said concisely. "What?" Chu Xiu looked at Lu Jianghe in shock. "Are you sure you're talking about the Heavenly Gate, one of the Eastern and Western Heavens? You're just a hall leader of the Blood Demon Hall. You don't have to be so arrogant, do you?" Lu Jianghe shrugged and said, "You can ask all the warriors who came from the Holy Sect. They will all answer like this. The leader of the Heavenly Gate was easily killed by the sect leader. 8 of the 9 great divine generals were killed by the sect leader and 1 was disabled. The entire eastern Kunlun mountain range would have become the vegetable garden of the Holy Sect if the sect leader had not shown mercy. If such an existence is not good for nothing, then what is? In fact, the Heavenly Gate is no different from most of the sects in the Jianghu that were destroyed by the sect leader. The only difference is that the other sects were killed by the sect leader in one move, but the Heavenly Gate took a few moves and was stronger." Chu Xiu secretly shook his head. Dugu Weiwei was too abnormal in the past. Compared to him, everyone was indeed good for nothing. However, Chu Xiu thought about it again. Last time when he absorbed Dugu Weiwei's drop of blood, the image left by Dugu Weiwei seemed to say, "I am you, you are me. Does that mean that I am also abnormal?" At this moment, when Pu Yangyi saw that everyone had calmed down, he said, "Everyone, the array formation has been opened. I wonder how everyone wishes to be teleported over?" Su Yan frowned and said, "How do we teleport? Could there be a problem with this space?" Pu Yangyi said, "Back then the people who laid this array formation should not have been from just one faction. Instead, over 10 factions worked together to lay this array formation. Hence, by relying on this array formation, we can directly teleport to the bases of those 10-odd factions in this secret realm. However, some of the array formations in this secret realm are already damaged, so we can only teleport to 6 of them. Of course, everyone can also mess up the array formation and teleport to a random location." Everyone present exchanged glances and discussed for a while. Finally, they chose to teleport to a random location. There were over 10 factions warriors present, but there were only 6 teleportation locations. No matter how they chose, there would definitely be a fight over it. However, they still didn't know how big this space secret realm was, and they didn't know what was in it. It was too rash to start fighting as soon as they teleported in. Although random teleportation depended on luck, it could also avoid such things as much as possible. After coming to a conclusion as Pu Yangyi opened the array formation, everyone also stepped in one by one. Before Wei Shuya entered, he transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu, "Be careful of Kuang Shiyue. The people of Elysium have always been secretive. No one knows what they want to do. You have been targeted by Kuang Shiyue. If there is a problem, escape first. Don't show off." Wei Shuya was also frightened by Chu Xiu's courage. In a short period of time, this person went against the flow and killed 2 true fire spirit refinement realm existences. Wei Shuya was also afraid that Chu Xiu would get carried away and go against Kuang Shiyue. The gap between the true fire spirit refinement realm was quite large, just like the gap between the real pellet realm. At least, whether it was Fang Jinwu or Yuan Tianfang, they were not qualified to be compared with Kuang Shiyue. Chu Xiu nodded. Without Yuan Tianfang saying anything, Chu Xiu also knew that Chu Xiu would not get carried away without a certain degree of certainty. Of course, if he was sure, Chu Xiu didn't mind killing an Elysium divine general. After all, if what Dugu Weiwei said was true, then 500 years ago, he had already killed a sect master and 8 divine generals. A golden light flashed in front of him. When Chu Xiu opened his eyes again, there was no one around him. There was no aura of martial artists' activity within a radius of more than 10 miles. After sensing the surrounding aura, Chu Xiu began to look around. This secret realm only gave Chu Xiu a feeling that it was a paradise, but it was a paradise that was smashed by someone with a hammer. The surrounding yuan qi of the universe was extremely dense, and all sorts of strange flowers and plants were blooming. Although they had grown in a mess, one could tell that they had been meticulously planted here in the past. After taking care of them, they would definitely grow into a magnificent appearance. Under the weeds and trees, he could also see a paved bluestone road, which was extremely clean. Along the way there were many courtyards or small temples for people to rest. From these things, one could see how prosperous the secret realm was in the past. However, at this moment, most of the courtyards and temples had already collapsed. Some places on the ground had also become extremely messy, as if an earth dragon had flipped over. As Chu Xiu walked along the road, he could already confirm that this place was indeed a secret realm in ancient times where the major forces and sects were stationed all year round. It was used for meetings or for seclusion and recuperation. However, these major sects were also wasteful enough. Such a treasure land, they did not even plant any spiritual herbs and the like. They actually used it to plant some highly ornamental trees and flowers. As Chu Xiu walked along the road, he basically did not see any spiritual herbs suitable for alchemy. At this moment he suddenly felt some movement in front of him. It seemed that there was also the aura of martial artists fighting. Chu Xiu immediately walked in that direction and looked through the dense jungle. A magnificent white jade palace stood in it, but unfortunately the white jade palace was smashed in half by a huge meteorite. At this time, in front of the white jade palace, the 2 brothers of the Sun family, Sun Qili and Sun Qifan, the 2 martial Dao masters of the Lu family of Gaoping, and Qing Tingshan of the Hidden Sword Villa were confronting each other. Obviously, everyone wanted to take the lead and monopolize the White Jade Palace. Among the 3 parties, the relationship between the Sun family of River East and the Lu family of Gaoping was considered good. However, in the face of treasures, the so-called relationship was nothing. Moreover, the 2 martial Dao masters of the Lu family of Gaoping were not very famous in Jianghu. They were inferior to the Sun brothers. Of course, they did not want to give the treasure to others. Although Qing Tingfeng was alone, he was someone who had been on the list after all. The real strength of the Hidden Sword Villa did not lie in the people, but in the swords they carried. Only God knew what kind of treasured weapon Qing Tingshan had brought from the Hidden Sword Villa this time. He was not afraid to face the other party alone or in pairs. Just when everyone was in a dilemma, whether to fight it out first to decide the ownership of the place or not to waste time and explore together, Chu Xiu happened to walk over from the side. The moment they saw Chu Xiu, the 5 people stood together almost at the same time with vigilance in their eyes. At least they were on the same side and their strength was not much different. However, Chu Xiu was no longer on the same side as them. Just when Qing Tingshan wanted to warn Chu Xiu first, Chu Xiu had already spoken with a smile on his face. "This place is not bad. Thank you for helping me find it. Now you can leave." Chapter 8:13. Chu Xiu's extremely arrogant attitude almost instantly infuriated Qing Tingshan and the other two groups. It's true that you, Chu Xiu, have a great reputation in Jianghu, and the hidden devil lineage is also very powerful now. But they are not to be trifled with. Why did you, Chu Xiu, ask them to scram the moment he came up? The three groups of people who were still at loggerheads immediately stood together. Qing Tingshan said coldly, Chu Xiu, who do you think you are? Do you really think that you can be comparable to an expert in the true fire spirit refining realm just because you killed a true fire spirit refining realm expert with a trick? Chu Xiu said indifferently, I have always known who I am, but unfortunately, you have not seen who you are. A wise man submits to circumstances. Since you don't want to scram, then I will help you scram. As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand was already unsheathed. The monstrous devil qi mixed with endless blood qi and the wailing of hungry ghosts slashed towards Qing Tingshan and the other four people. All along, most of Chu Xiu's enemies were much stronger than him. Against people like Fang Jingwu and Yuan Tianfang, Chu Xiu could only use all sorts of crafty plots and schemes, and only after spending a great deal of effort to scheme against them could he kill them. But in fact, most of the time, Chu Xiu did not like to do so. Why make a problem that could be solved with one slash so complicated? Just like now, I have my eyes on this palace. Will you give it to me? If you don't, then I will beat you until you do. He did not know if it was because he knew about his relationship with Dugu Weiwei, but subconsciously, Chu Xiu also thought that Dugu Weiwei's way of doing things was very much to his liking. Under the premise of having absolute power, there was no need to do so many useless things. There was only one word: kill. The power of Chu Xiu slash caused Qing Tingshan's expression to suddenly change. In fact, Qing Tingshan had fought with Chu Xiu more than once. In the past, before Chu Xiu reached the real pellet state, he had already fought with Chu Xiu. Of course, he was at a disadvantage in that battle. If there were no others present this time, he would not dare to say this to Chu Xiu, and he would probably scram. However, he had never expected Chu Xiu's power foundation to be so powerful. In just a few short years of cultivation, Chu Xiu's power foundation was already stronger than what he had cultivated for decades. Qing Tingshan unsheathed the 7 long swords behind him. One was a divine weapon and the other 6 were precious weapons. Under the control of his aura, the 7 long swords condensed into the Big Dipper 7-star sword array. In an instant, the starlight shone, and it greeted Chu Xiu's slash. But under the endless surging demonic qi, the entire Big Dipper 7-star sword array collapsed in an instant. 6 of the 7 long swords shattered in an instant, and only one of the divine weapons did not shatter, blocking Chu Xiu's slash. But Qing Tingshan was also shocked back step by step. At this moment, the Sun brothers had already made a move. One of them punched out while the other landed a palm strike. Cold ice gang qi erupted with a loud rumble as if the surroundings, which were like spring all year round, had turned into a frigid winter. The 2 martial artists of the Gaoping Lu family held long spears in their hands, and they stabbed at Chu Xiu at the same time. The power was also very powerful. When the spear fell, it was like thunder falling from the sky, making bursts of roars and roars. It was said that the Gaoping Lu family was born in the military, and the ancestor of the Lu family was a general in the dynasty before Eastern Qi. Because of the enmity with the imperial court, he resigned and lived in seclusion. There were very few martial artists in the Jianghu who used the spear as their weapon. The Gaoping Lu family was born in the military, so the strongest spear technique passed down in their family, the 9th Heaven Thunder Meteorite Spear, could be said to be a sharp weapon in the military. Its power might be a bit ordinary, but if the people of the Lu family used this spear technique together, the power would not be as simple as 1 + 1. The 4 people besieged him. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hand and displayed the great blood shadow technique. In an instant, the blood roared, and the blood shadows directly met the 4 people around him. All kinds of martial arts exploded, and the 4 people were actually forced to retreat. At the same time, Chu Xiu's figure did not stop at all. He directly slashed at Qing Tingshan with his blade. Under the powerful momentum of the blade, Qing Tingshan did not even have the chance to fight back, and could only retreat step by step. Even the divine weapon in his hand, under the attack of the sky demon dance, let out a sorrowful cry, and a crack appeared on its surface. Qing Tingshan gritted his teeth and did not even dare to say a word. He directly turned and fled. The martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa loved their swords as much as their lives. Right now, if he was attacked by Chu Xiu until he vomited blood, he might not retreat. But now that his divine weapon was damaged, he really did not want to fight anymore. Qing Tingshan's retreat had caused the other 4 to be trapped there. Chu Xiu turned around, and the blood-red demonic qi around him flourished. At that moment, the four people who were desperately resisting the blood shadows felt the blood in their bodies begin to boil uncontrollably, as if it was about to rush out of their bodies. Chu Xiu held the sky demon dance in his hand and slashed horizontally in all directions. As the blade fell, the blood in the four people's bodies seemed to respond to Chu Xiu's blade, and violently boiled and collided, causing them to vomit blood in an instant. With one slash, all four of them were injured. Seeing this scene, the four people did not even have the mood to continue fighting. They immediately turned and fled. Moreover, they were afraid that Chu Xiu would pursue them, so they fled in 4 different directions. Looking at their fleeing figures, the corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled up. But before he could speak, Lu Jiang spoke on behalf of Chu Xiu in his mind. What a bunch of trash. This group of people is getting worse with each generation. Those fellows from the Hidden Sword Villa have collected a bunch of divine weapons, but the people they use are such trash. It's an insult to the divine swords. The descendants of that old turtle from the Sun family aren't much better. They stay by the river every day and their strength has also become so weak. It's a pity for the Lu family. Back then, there was someone from the Lu family who dared to challenge the Red Lotus Demon Lord with a spear. Although he died very miserably, he still had the courage. Now, it seems that the Lu family doesn't even have the spear in their pants, let alone the spear in their hands. They're just cowards. Lu Jianghe's tone was one of exasperation. 500 years ago, the pugilistic world was also full of experts and heroes. But now, only this bunch of people were left? Chu Xiu, on the other hand, felt that this was very normal. In times of crisis, countless heroes would naturally emerge. But now that the pugilistic world had been at peace for 500 years, most of the major forces in the pugilistic world were focused on scheming against each other. In such an environment, it was obvious what kind of people could be produced. And now, after Qing Tingshan and the others had fled, they gathered together and were still blaming each other. The Sun brothers and the people from the Lu family of Gaoping accused Qing Tingshan of fleeing first and leaving them there. Moreover, Qing Tingshan still had a trump card, but he did not use it. The box that Qing Tingshan was carrying on his back definitely contained the most powerful divine sword that the Hidden Sword Villa had collected, but he did not use it just now. When Qing Tingshan heard that, he also scolded the other party for being too useless. He had already stalled Chu Xiu, but in the end, the four of them could not even defeat those blood shadows. They could not even get close to Chu Xiu. After the group of people scolded each other, they had no choice but to turn around and continue searching for other relics and resources. Right now they had just entered the ruins. Who would be willing to risk their lives now? Moreover, there were 3 groups of people and they were not of the same mind. If they risked their lives, what about the others? On the other side, Chu Xiu had already entered the White Jade Palace. The White Jade Palace looked extremely magnificent and luxurious from the outside, and it was almost the same inside. There were carved beams and painted pillars everywhere, but the patterns were completely different from the current style. There were some inscriptions that even Chu Xiu could not recognize. Walking further in, there was a half-collapsed hall, surrounded by a circle of exquisite tables and chairs. Chu Xiu also noticed that there were names written on them, but Chu Xiu didn't recognize them. It felt like they were right, but at the same time they weren't. The current language was inherited from the ancient age. Although it was somewhat different, most of the cultivation technique manuals were written in the ancient age. Chu Xiu could also recognize it, but the language here was confusing. Chu Xiu really could not recognize it. At this moment, Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Country bumpkins, right? You junior cultivators are ignorant and incompetent. In the past, when this senior just started cultivating, not to mention these things, I learned array Dao, alchemy Dao, weapon forging and everything else. This senior will teach you. This language is a kind of ancient array pattern. It is obscure and simple, but it is a language that the ancestors of my human race comprehended from the truth of the world. It can absorb a small amount of world energy on its own. However, because these characters were too ancient, so ancient that they couldn't describe things in too much detail, they were abandoned. But on some important occasions, some ancient sects are still willing to use this language to write something short." Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghe's smugness and just asked, "What is written on it?" Lu Jianghe said, "It's all the names of some ancient sections: 3 Pure Temple, High Heaven Sect, Heavenly Luo Temple. These are the names of those ancient sections. Boy, you have picked up a treasure. This may be the place where those ancient sects hold meetings or preach. Although this is not the ruins of a sect, and you probably won't be able to find any cultivation techniques or anything like that, But in ancient times, it was common for powerhouses to preach the Tao. If you can find some of the experiences and insights recorded by others, it will be of great benefit to you. The ancient times were also a flourishing age of martial arts. Compared to the present, the ancient times may have been more abundant in world yuan qi, so the strength of cultivators was stronger and cultivation was easier. In that era, preaching the Tao was very popular. The masters of all the major sects liked to open forums and preach the Tao. Moreover, there was no discrimination. As long as they were not from hostile sects, they would come to listen to the preaching. Of course, the preaching was only about the experience of martial arts, not about the cultivation techniques of their own sections. At present, this hall was extremely magnificent, and there were the participation of 3 Pure Temple High Heaven sect, and other top sections. One could imagine what kind of existence was qualified to preach the Tao here. Chu Xiu had indeed picked up a treasure. Chapter 8:14. When Cheng Tingshan and the others found this place, they began to confront each other even before they entered. If they had seen what was inside, they probably would not have let it go so easily. Chu Xiu rummaged back and forth in the palace and found some records engraved on jade talismans or animal skin papers. Almost all the people who came to participate in the sermon brought back what they had recorded. The sermon records that Chu Xiu had found should have been used by the preacher's disciples and grand-disciples as records. They directly wrote down the preacher's description verbatim. Although it seemed a little obscure and difficult to understand, it was less indifferent and closer to the preacher's original meaning. These things could not be digested in a short time, so Chu Xiu only glanced at them briefly and put them away. He planned to carefully study them when he went into seclusion in the future. However, at this time, Chu Xiu found a very strange record in a corner. It was not a record of martial arts explanations, but a meeting record from ancient times. It recorded a discussion that had taken place here, mixed with some of the ideas of the person who recorded it. The content was much more interesting. Longwu calendar, Guihai year, 17th of September, 3:45 a.m. The sects of the northern region held a meeting to discuss the great plan of opening up the world. The eminent monk of Tianluo Temple said, "All the worlds in the world have experienced the 4 tribulations of completion, rebirth, destruction, and emptiness. These are the tribulations of the heavens, and it is difficult to preserve even a glimmer of life. It is better to leave the secret box and pass it on. After the 4 tribulations, a new world will be formed and the world will be reopened." The Taoist master of the 3 Pristines Temple said, "Nonsense. The Taoist lineage has experienced hundreds of millions of tribulations to survive. There are 50 great ways, 49 heavenly evolutions, and only one is human. If you don't find a glimmer of life and wait for death, you deserve to die under the tribulations." Note: I think the Taoist master of the 3 Pristines Temple has a point. We martial artists cultivate ourselves and understand the world. We exchange our weak bodies for great power. If we only know how to surrender in the face of tribulations, wouldn't we be too useless? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed that regardless of whether it was the ancient times or the present, these so-called supreme powerhouses were actually more or less the same. They would also curse when they were angry. The Tao master of the 3 Pristines Palace was a man of temperament. During such a discussion, he even dared to point at the other party's nose and scold them. The Imperial Sky Pavilion's pavilion master said that the great building is about to collapse. Regardless of whether we're going to sit here and wait for death or find another way out, we'll have to do it together. The plan to split open the heavens must be carried out, so we must make preparations early. The great calamity is already looming, and it will be too late if we delay. The eminent monk of the heavenly Luo Temple said, "The martial artists of my generation have gone through a tribulation, and so have the myriad worlds. Rumor has it that after experiencing the tribulation of the myriad worlds, the supreme sky of freedom would be formed. Those who entered it would become immortal and become gods. All of you, by splitting open the sky, you are actually going against the heavens, destroying the karma and destiny of this world. You will no longer have the qualifications to enter the sky of freedom. You are harming others and you are harming yourself." Note: the legend of the sky of freedom has existed for countless years. The Buddhists often call it the sky of ultimate bliss, while the Taoists call it the sky of longevity. Of course, most people still call it the sky of freedom. Rumor has it that in that place there will be no end to the world and no one will live, grow old, get sick, or die. It is the residence of gods and Buddhas, and those who enter it will become gods and Buddhas. But does such a place really exist? Others might believe it, but I don't. If everyone becomes immortal and gives birth to children, wouldn't the sky of freedom be filled to the brim? Would it still be the sky of freedom? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Why was the sky of freedom brought up again? He had never heard of this name before. You've heard of the sky of freedom? Chu Xiu suddenly asked Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe thought for a while and said, the master of the eastern sea of freedom? After hearing Lu Jianghe's words, Chu Xiu suddenly remembered that the master of the eastern sea of freedom was in the eastern and western heavens. Could it be that the mysterious master of the sky of freedom was related to the ancient legend of the sky of freedom? Or was it that the other party had only heard of this name by chance and thought it sounded good, so he used it as the name of his sect? Chu Xiu was a little confused, so he ignored his doubts and continued reading. High Heaven Sect Master said, freedom and longevity are all fabricated. In the face of the great calamity, we do not seek longevity, but seize every moment. If you can't come to the plan of splitting the heavens, my High Heaven Sect will do it. Sects of the Northern Territory, as long as you are a subordinate of my High Heaven Sect, can submit candidates to participate in the plan of splitting the heavens, but the number of people is limited, and each sect may only have a few people qualified to participate. If you don't want to come, make room for others. Note, the High Heaven Sect Master is decisive and domineering, and should be a role model for our generation. The Three Pure Temples Tao Venerables said, my Three Pure Temple agrees as long as you belong to the Tao sects, the Northern Territory, the Eastern Territory, and the Southern Territory can come to participate in the plan of splitting the heavens. The great calamity is coming, but you bald donkeys are guarding the Western Territory without making any progress, while my Tao sect has already paid with countless lives. Spiritual Treasure Temple's Temple Master, Taoist Crimson Afterglow, in order to protect a county in the Northern Territory, turned his body into the light of the spiritual treasure to suppress the dragon vein and died. There are only 2 people left in the entire Spiritual Treasure Temple. If we don't think of a way, how many of our 3,000 Tao sects will be left in the end? Note sad. Spiritual Treasure Temple is one of the few sects in the world that can think for the common people. It is said that in order to resist the great calamity and save the common people, the Spiritual Treasure Temple had 37 people, and only 2 were left. Even the Taoist priest in the kitchen died in the great calamity. Spiritual Treasure Temple's selection of disciples is based on character, comprehension, and talent. Therefore, it is extremely difficult to accept disciples. So many years of hard work have been destroyed in a day. Spiritual Treasure Temple's Temple Master, Taoist Crimson Afterglow, was the most hopeful to step into the martial immortal realm among the martial artists who have reached the heaven and earth metaphysic realm. If he took the last step, Tao sect will have one more Tao Master. What a pity. However, I heard that Tao Master and Taoist Crimson Afterglow had a grudge in the early years. Now that Taoist Crimson Afterglow is dead, and Spiritual Treasure Temple is on the verge of destruction, is Tao Master sincere in his grief, or is he just pretending? Thinking back to a few years ago, I met Taoist Crimson Afterglow's eldest disciple, Taoist Ling Qingzi, and I was impressed by his demeanor. I wonder if Taoist Ling Qingzi escaped the calamity. Dragon Martial Calendar, Year Gui Hai, 17th of September, Shinshi. Many sects parted on bad terms. Those who agree with the plan of opening the heavens occupy 60%, those who disagree occupy 20%, and the remaining 20% are undecided. Putting away the record, Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. If this thing were to spread, it would definitely cause an uproar in the outside world. This record had already explained a lot of things. As the great calamity of the ancient times approached, those sects did not choose to sit still and wait for death. Instead, they thought of many ways to save themselves, and this plan of opening the heavens was one of them. However, which heavens was this plan of opening the heavens? As for what the so-called sky of freedom was all about, even the ancient sects themselves might not be able to explain it clearly. Moreover, there was a description of the martial immortal realm. It was estimated that it would also cause an uproar. Chu Xiu once found the diary of the little junior brother of Spiritual Treasure Temple in the small mortal realm. It had already said that the big senior brother of Spiritual Treasure Temple was already a martial arts master of the real pellet realm, and his master was a powerhouse of the mysterious heaven and earth realm. However, looking at the notes on this diary, it was obvious that there was a realm above the mysterious heaven and earth realm called Martial Immortal. In ancient times, there were many people who reached this realm, such as the Tao Master of the Three Pristines Temple. It should be a title. Only those who reached the Martial Immortal realm were qualified to be called Tao Master. The powerhouses that appeared in the records, the monks of Tianluo Treasure Temple, the pavilion master of Royal Sky Pavilion, and the sect master of High Heaven Sect were obviously at the same level as the Tao Master. They must have reached the martial immortal realm. Do you know anything about the martial immortal realm? Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe said, "Of course I know." Hearing Lu Jianghe's words, Chu Xiu was taken aback. "You know? Why haven't I heard anyone mention it?" Lu Jianghe said disdainfully, "I don't know about the martial immortal realm, but there is a path above the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Even an idiot knows about it, okay? Think about it, what is the level of the current mysterious heaven and earth realm? In the past, these so-called mysterious heaven and earth realm powerhouses were simply vulnerable in front of the sect master. The sect master of that generation was also in the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but what was the result? Wasn't he still slaughtered by the sect master like a chicken? The sect master has never said that he has surpassed the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but in my opinion he has already crossed that step long ago. And Ning Xuanji, he can fight evenly with the sect master and is called an immortal. With his strength, does he deserve the title of martial immortal?" Chu Xiu patted his head. He had experienced a lot of things recently and was greatly impacted, so he didn't see it as clearly as Lu Jianghe. Not hearing about it didn't mean it didn't exist, but there were too few people in this realm. Because of the loss of ancient books, no one had passed down the name of this realm. So even if Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei had really reached this realm, they might not even know what their realm was called. Chu Xiu didn't delve too deeply into these things. He carefully searched the palace for a while, and after finding nothing good, he prepared to leave. During this period of time, Kuang Shiyue was also wandering around. Unlike the urgency of the others, who were hurriedly looking for opportunities in the secret realm, afraid that something would go wrong and cause them to end up with nothing, Kuang Shiyue, on the other hand, was extremely leisurely. It was as if he was taking a walk, looking left and right, and even admiring the surrounding scenery. He couldn't be more leisurely. At this moment he suddenly felt some movement in front of him. He walked over and saw that it was Qing Tingshan and the other four. They had just finished arguing and were about to leave. At this moment they were still wondering if they should explore alone or continue working together. When they suddenly saw Kuang Shiyue, the expressions on their faces immediately changed. The divine generals of the heavenly gates were considered top-notch existences even among the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses. They didn't know what the other party's attitude was, good or evil. Seeing the five of them, a smile appeared at the corner of Kuang Shiyue's mouth. He said, "Everyone, did you find anything good? If I'm satisfied you can leave. If I'm not, I'll kill you." Chapter 8:15. Kuang Shiyue was a lunatic, a temperamental lunatic. This was what Chu Xiu thought. In fact, he was indeed temperamental. Similar to Divine Lord Luo, he did not take the people of the Jianghu seriously. To be precise, he did not take the people of the Jianghu seriously at all. Other people of the Jianghu had rules, but the Elysium had no rules. The people of the Elysium only followed their own rules. As for the others, he could kill them if he wanted. Sword Concealment Villa, River East Sun Clan, to Kuang Shiyue, killing them all depended on his mood. Just like now, if Qing Tingshan and the rest's answers made him happy, he would not kill them. If he was not happy, what he said just now was not a joke. Qing Tingshan and the rest's expressions changed immediately. Before this, they were still cursing Chu Xiu for being overbearing and snatching the relics that they had discovered first. But now they realized that Chu Xiu's overbearing was considered good. This person was completely unreasonable. At this moment, Qing Tingshan suddenly thought of something. He immediately said, "Sir, we discovered a huge palace relic, but Chu Xiu snatched it before we could enter. Now Chu Xiu should still be there. If you are interested, we can lead the way for you." Kuang Shiyue's face showed a hint of interest. "Oh, is that so? If that's the case, I'll be very happy. Bring me there." Qing Tingshan also suddenly thought of what happened between Kuang Shiyue and Chu Xiu. This divine general of the Elysium seemed to be very interested in Chu Xiu. Qing Tingshan could also kill him with a borrowed knife. But at this moment, Kuang Shiyue added, "Of course, if I don't find Chu Xiu, I'll still kill you." Qing Tingshan and the rest's expressions changed. They finally knew what it meant to be temperamental. But they did not dare to resist. The lunatics of the Elysium would not care about their background, let alone the rules of the Jianghu. Chu Xiu had just walked out of the palace when he bumped into Kuang Shiyue and the others. Looking at Chu Xiu, Kuang Shiyue's lips curled into a smile. "Kid, you won't be able to escape from my palm. Don't worry, I don't have any evil intentions towards you. I just want to study how you scared that fellow, Divine Lord Luo, to the point that he crawled back to the Divine Gate. Tisk, it's rare to see that guy in such a sorry state. I'm really curious. Just cooperate with me. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Kuang Shiyue had just finished speaking when Chu Xiu's demonic aura gathered around him. Two giant hands made of demonic aura rose from behind him, releasing an extreme demonic might. A longbow had already been condensed. With one hand on the bow and 3 arms on the bowstring, the triple-link city-destroying arrow was shot out in an instant. Everything in its path was annihilated. No one, not even Kuang Shiyue himself, had expected Chu Xiu's attack to be so swift and fierce. In fact, the moment he saw the triple-link city-destroying arrow, his expression became a little dazed. He had seen this arrow before. The Divine Gate had once preserved the video of Dugu Weiwei killing the master of the Divine Gate and slaughtering the 8 great divine generals. Every disciple who joined the Divine Gate had to watch it because it was a disgrace. The disgrace of the Divine Gate. Although it was strange that after the decline of the Kunlun devil cult in the later stages, the master of the Divine Gate had forbidden his disciples from finding trouble with the Kunlun devil cult. However, this video was something that every disciple who joined the Divine Gate had to watch, and they had to watch it very carefully. In the past, Dugu Weiwei had used this arrow to pierce through 2 divine generals of the Divine Gate at the same time, as if he was killing chickens. The 2 of them were skewered together and then they died. Kuang Shiyue would never forget that scene for the rest of his life. However, the power of the arrow shot by Chu Xiu clearly could not be compared to that of Dugu Weiwei. In fact, it was not even qualified to be compared. Kuang Shiyue stretched out his hands, and the sparkling moonlight appeared in his hands. Although the sky was clear, it was as if there was a bright moon in the sky. Everything was destroyed wherever the triple city extinguishing arrow passed. Even the moonlight dissipated. However, at this moment, Kuang Shiyue put his hands together, and the moonlight shone brightly. The triple city extinguishing arrow was forcibly held in his hands. With a loud bang, the moonlight and the arrow were extinguished at the same time. Fishing the moon from the water, turning the hand to grasp the sky. Cheng Tingshan and the other 4 were dumbfounded as they watched the exchange between the 2 of them. In the past 2 years, Chu Xiu had been hanging around in the northern Yan land. Although his reputation was often spread in the Jianghu, Cheng Tingshan and the other 4 did not have a direct understanding of his strength. Even though they had already felt that Chu Xiu was very strong, it was not until Chu Xiu used the triple city extinguishing arrow that they realized that Chu Xiu was actually this strong. Apart from Cheng Tingshan, who could use his trump card, the Divine Sword, to block the power of this arrow, everyone else would definitely die. Of course, what shocked them even more was Kuang Shiyue. If Chu Xiu's strength was only strong, then Kuang Shiyue's strength was so strong that it made people tremble. The triple annihilation city arrow was so powerful, yet he was able to block it in one move. Wasn't this powerful enough? The violent demonic energy and moonlight shattered, but Chu Xiu had already disappeared. But at this moment, the smile on Kuang Shiyue's face had already slowly disappeared, and a trace of killing intent had already appeared. Boy, you're courting death. Previously, Kuang Shiyue was only interested in Chu Xiu because of Divine Lord Luo. But now he wanted to crush Chu Xiu, who dared to resist him, to death. But at the same time, Kuang Shiyue was also puzzled. Had Divine Lord Luo been scared off because he saw this arrow? This was somewhat illogical. What Chu Xiu had used was indeed the triple city extinguishing arrow that he had inherited from Dugu Weiwei. But thinking of his identity as the inheritor of the hidden devil bloodline, it was not strange that he could obtain a part of Dugu Weiwei's martial arts from the past. Just like just now, Kuang Shiyue only thought of those scenes in the past and was a little absent-minded, but he did not really think that Chu Xiu was Dugu Weiwei. Although Kuang Shiyue often ridiculed Divine Lord Luo in the Elysium, he also knew that Divine Lord Luo should not be so timid. Kuang Shiyue's eyes flashed with killing intent. He murmured, "Forget it. After I catch you, I'll cut you open and see what you're hiding." As soon as he finished speaking, Kuang Shiyue's figure had already turned into a moonlight and disappeared. Cheng Tingshan and the others immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Being next to such a temperamental and abnormally powerful guy like Kuang Shiyue was extremely stressful. And then the 5 of them began to gloat. "Who asked you, Chu Xiu, to rob us of our opportunities and benefits?" Now that they could not get the things in the palace, Chu Xiu could not either. Being targeted by such an abnormally powerful expert, even if Chu Xiu did not die, he would definitely not feel good. Cheng Tingshan and the others were right. At the moment, Chu Xiu was indeed not feeling good. The moment Kuang Shiyue appeared, Chu Xiu already knew what he was going to do. Therefore he made a prompt decision to attack and use all his strength to repel his opponent, creating time for himself to escape. But he did not expect that the Elysium Divine Generals would all be so strong. Divine Lord Luo was very strong and so was Kuang Shiyue. If all the Elysium Divine Generals appeared in the underworld, they would probably be able to take over the entire reputation list. Even Yuan Tianfang had to use all his strength to withstand Chu Xiu's triple city-destroying arrow. He did not even dare to make the slightest mistake. One mistake and he would be seriously injured. Yet, in the hands of Kuang Shiyue, it was so effortless. Seeing this, Chu Xiu did not have the intention to fight back. At the moment, Chu Xiu's speed had been raised to the extreme by him. The internal binding seal of the fast and slow 9 words formula was originally known for its speed. However, this speed was only used in fierce combat, as it consumed a lot of vital qi when used over long distances. But now Chu Xiu relied on his profound strength. He had already exerted the internal binding seal to the extreme and used it to escape. His speed was like flowing light. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see Chu Xiu's figure clearly. However, Chu Xiu could still feel the extreme killing intent coming from behind him. Kuang Shiyue's speed was not inferior to his, and was even faster. An hour later, a flowing light appeared behind Chu Xiu. Kuang Shiyue sneered and said, "Run? Why don't you keep running? Originally, I was going to let you live after studying you. That would be giving face to those old guys from the Yinma clan. But now, I don't want to study the living anymore. Studying the dead is the same." Moonlight condensed in Kuang Shiyue's hand. The white moonlight was so solid that it actually condensed into a crescent moon scimitar in his hand. As his scimitar slashed down, the whole space seemed to be cut open. Under the power of the scimitar, no matter how fast Chu Xiu's speed was, he could not outrun the space that was being cut open. If he continued to run, he would be cut into two before he could escape the range of Kuang Shiyue's scimitar. In an instant, Chu Xiu turned back, drew his scimitar and slashed. The scimitar's power rushed into the sky, and as the raging waves swept out, it seemed to tear apart and swallow everything in the world. 7 limits sea breaking. The two powerful scimitars collided, and the whole space seemed to pause. But the next moment, a silent loud sound was heard. Everything around them was torn apart, and the ground was densely covered with scimitar marks that were hundreds of feet long. Kuang Shiyue's scimitar power was broken. He stood where he was and frowned slightly. 7 limits to swallow the heavens and destroy the earth? This scimitar technique should have disappeared after the great ancient calamity. How can someone still know it? Kuang Shiyue seemed relaxed, but Chu Xiu was not feeling well at this moment. During the collision, the terrifying impact even tore his meridians. Fortunately, he had the eternal demon pill, which quickly restored the power in Chu Xiu's body, so he did not vomit blood on the spot. Chapter 8:16. Chu Xiu's heart sank when his sea-cleaving saber did not work. Kuang Shiyue's strength was so deep that even if he went all out, he still could not do anything to him. He could not beat him for the time being. He could not outrun him even if he ran. This was the first time in a long time that Chu Xiu had fallen into such an awkward situation. Kuang Shiyue seemed to have been angered by Chu Xiu's continuous confrontations. He formed a seal with his hands and moonlight shone around him, forming a hazy moon shadow in the air. Kuang Shiyue bit his fingertip, and blood sprayed out instantly, dyeing the moon shadow red and turning it into a blood moon. Then it smashed down toward Chu Xiu. The blood moon hung in the sky and fell from the sky. The power was like a landslide, and it directly enveloped an area of thousands of feet around Chu Xiu. The strong pressure sealed the space, leaving no place for Chu Xiu to dodge. Taking a deep breath, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand emitted an extremely pure demonic aura. Lu Jianghe's eyes suddenly shrank. He recognized it. It was the power of Patriarch Dugu. But this power was very faint. Apart from people like him who had followed Dugu Weiwei for decades, no one else could recognize it. In fact, Chu Xiu did not even notice the changes in his own power. As he slashed out with his saber, the entire space seemed to freeze. Like a painting scroll, it was slashed into two by Chu Xiu's saber, and the scarlet blood moon also gradually collapsed. Misty red dust cut. Kuang Shiyue stared at Chu Xiu. This time he was really surprised. This Chu Xiu could even use the misty red dust cut. Who was he? Is he the second disciple of Dugu Weiwei? If this saber was used by Dugu Weiwei, it might really have the power to cut through space in the world of mortals. But when Chu Xiu used it, it was much weaker. Although Kuang Shiyue's condensed blood moon had been successfully destroyed by that saber strike, he himself had also spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious backlash, and his strength had been consumed to the extreme. However, right at this moment, a thick mist of blood blossomed around Chu Xiu's body. He had pushed the demonic blood art to its limits and was actually burning his own blood essence in exchange for his own power. Forming a seal with both hands, Chu Xiu spat out an incantation. In an instant, the sky changed color, and the faint wails of ghosts and deities could be heard. This was the starting stance of the great compassion mantra of heaven and earth. No one had ever been able to complete this technique. Kuang Shiyue didn't know about Chu Xiu's background. Suddenly feeling this power, even Kuang Shiyue's expression changed. Previously, whether it was Chu Xiu's triple destruction city arrow or misty red dust chop, because of Chu Xiu's own body, Kuang Shiyue wasn't afraid of them. But in front of this great compassion mantra of devil wailing heaven, Kuang Shiyue felt an extremely strong threat. This power was enough to hurt his foundation. Kuang Shiyue subconsciously took a few steps back. But at this moment an even thicker blood mist exploded, and a blood shadow flew out from it at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared without a trace. The horrifying scene in midair that had changed the color of heaven and earth also quickly dispersed. Kuang Shiyue's expression immediately darkened. He had actually been fooled by Chu Xiu. Just now, that was only the starting stance of a technique. Kuang Shiyue thought that Chu Xiu wanted to fight it head-on, but in fact, Chu Xiu wanted to escape. With a cold snort, Kuang Shiyue's figure turned into a stream of light and immediately chased after the blood shadow. Just a quarter of an hour after Kuang Shiyue left, there was a sudden movement on the ground, which had been messed up by the two of them. A crimson cocoon appeared from within. In the end, the bloody aura dissipated, revealing Chu Xiu's face, which was as pale as a sheet of paper. After coming out of the blood cocoon, Chu Xiu didn't waste any time. He immediately left in the opposite direction. After walking for more than 10 miles, he found a hidden place, dug out a cave and went into seclusion to recuperate. Kuang Shiyue thought that Chu Xiu had fooled him, but in fact Chu Xiu had another trick up his sleeve. That blood shadow was real. It was a blood shadow of the great blood shadow technique. Chu Xiu endured the pain of severing the connection between him and it, and let it escape with a part of his qi and blood. Because that blood shadow had Chu Xiu's qi and blood, its aura was exactly the same as Chu Xiu's. It wouldn't stop until all the power of qi and blood was completely exhausted. After using the Triple City Annihilation Arrow, Sea Breaker and Red Dust Slash, which were extremely powerful but also consumed a lot of energy, Chu Xiu's body was almost at the end of its rope. Even if he used the demonic blood power to burn his essence and blood, it would still be useless. Because he didn't have the confidence to defeat Kuang Shiyue with this move. Therefore he had to use some small tricks to save his life. He cut off a blood shadow to distract the target, and then he hid in the blood cocoon created by the demonic blood power. Because Chu Xiu had burned his qi and blood before, the power of his qi and blood was very strong. Chu Xiu sealed himself in the blood cocoon, so Kuang Shiyue definitely couldn't sense his aura. He could only sense the remaining qi and blood, so he didn't suspect anything and went straight after that blood shadow. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. It was rare for him to be in such a difficult situation. At this time, Chu Xiu finally understood the benefits of the Eternal Demon Pill, and why it was called the Eternal Demon Pill. If it was anyone else who had suffered such a consumption and backlash from Chu Xiu, they would have already met the King of Hell. But the Eternal Demon Pill in Chu Xiu's body had released a power from the very beginning, preserving the last trace of Chu Xiu's life source and not letting it be damaged. It could even be said that even if Chu Xiu were to fight Kuang Shiyue with his bare arms, the Eternal Demon Pill would still preserve Chu Xiu's last trace of immortality. It was because of the Eternal Demon Pill that Chu Xiu dared to play like this. Otherwise, the great compassion mantra of the Devil's Lament just now would have been enough to squeeze Chu Xiu dry. It took a day and swallowed countless elixirs. Of course, they were not the blood recovery elixirs produced by the Zhenwu Hall, but the special healing elixirs that Chu Xiu got from miracle doctor Feng Buping. Only then did he recover 90% of his consumed injuries. Recovering to this state in a day was already the limit, and this was with the help of the Eternal Demon Pill. The remaining 10% needed to be recuperated for a period of time, but it wouldn't affect the next battle. Elysium Kuang Shiyue. A cold look flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had never suffered such a big loss. Although Chu Xiu was gnashing his teeth at Kuang Shiyue, he had to admit that the strength of the Elysium was really terrifying. It was known that the Elysium was almost exterminated by Dugu Weiwei. The master of the Elysium was killed, 8 of the 9 divine generals were killed, and 1 was disabled. In the end, relying on such a disabled person, the Elysium returned to its peak within 500 years. This kind of strength was really terrifying. If it were other sects, they might not be able to recover even after thousands of years. After replying, Chu Xiu immediately walked out of the cave where he was cultivating in seclusion. Time could not be delayed in the secret territory. Who knew how long this secret territory could last? After experiencing the great ancient calamity, this kind of space secret territory that existed alone was very unstable and could easily collapse. Therefore, this kind of secret territory usually had a strength limit. If an expert with a certain level of strength entered it, it would cause the secret territory to collapse. Even if no experts entered, if someone triggered some array formation, it might cause the mystic realm to collapse. Therefore, Chu Xiu had to make the best use of his time and continue to explore it. However, as soon as he came out, Chu Xiu sensed that someone was coming. He looked in the direction of the other party and saw a person who was also stunned. He was hundreds of feet away from Chu Xiu, and their gazes met. However, in the next moment, that person immediately turned around and fled. The corner of Chu Xiu's mouth revealed a trace of a sinister smile. The person that Chu Xiu encountered was Duan Tianlang. Just now, when Chu Xiu was being chased, he was in a bad mood. Now that he encountered Duan Tianlang, he could only say that he was unlucky. Duan Tianlang also felt that he was very unlucky. Ever since he entered the mystic realm, he had yet to obtain anything good. Only he and Bu Tiannan from the Blue Dragon Society came here. After the random teleportation, the two of them naturally separated. During this period he found a few ruins, but they had already been occupied by others. Although the people who entered this place were all competitors, the relationship between them was also very complicated. After the competition, they could also work together without any hindrance. For example, it was normal for the 5 major sword sects or the 9 major families to cooperate. However, the reputation of the Blue Dragon Society in the pugilistic world had always been bad. In addition, with a madman like Bu Tiannan as the leader, the reputation of the Blue Dragon Society was basically similar to that of the demon sections. In this way, no matter who the others chose to ally with, they would not choose to ally with him. Therefore, Duan Tianlang did not obtain anything useful in the past 2 days. In the end, he actually encountered an enemy like Chu Xiu. It was simply bloody bad luck. The speed of the inner binding seal was pushed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. His figure left an afterimage and went straight to Duan Tianlang. In less than a quarter of an hour, the distance between the two had shrunk from 100 feet to about 100 feet. The heavenly demon dance slashed down, and the monstrous demonic energy with an incomparably horrifying bloody aura crashed down with majestic power. Duan Tianlang hurriedly turned around and stretched out his hand. The aura within 100 feet of him completely wrapped around Chu Xiu's slash, wanting to crush it. However, the power of this slash was too great. It directly broke through Duan Tianlang's black spatial divine claw, and the remaining demonic energy instantly blew Duan Tianlang away. In the past, when Duan Tianlang chased after Chu Xiu even had to use all his strength to resist his black spatial divine claw. But now he also had to use all his strength to resist a casual slash from Chu Xiu, and it was somewhat difficult for him to do so. Everything was predestined. Now that Chu Xiu and Duan Tianlang had completely switched roles, the feeling of revenge was quite good. Chapter 8:17. With just one slash, Duan Tianlang felt a life-and-death crisis. He knew that the gap between him and Chu Xiu was very big, but he didn't expect it to be so big. Duan Tianlang gritted his teeth. Before Chu Xiu slashed for the second time, his whole body was already burning with a majestic power of blood. He actually chose to burn his blood essence to escape. Chu Xiu sneered when he saw this. Burning his blood essence in front of him, Duan Tianlang was courting death. When the blood divine demonic technique was activated, all the surrounding power of blood, whether it was Chu Xiu's own or others, was under his control. In an instant, Duan Tianlang felt that his whole body was boiling. His own blood essence was actually out of his control. Duan Tianlang clenched his teeth as he watched the blood-red shadows fly out from Chu Xiu's surroundings, bringing with them a terrifying aura to attack him. His body was enveloped by a layer of green light, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye like a swimming dragon. Chu Xiu frowned and he retracted the blood shadow technique. Duan Tianlang really didn't expect this guy to have such a move. This speed was even similar to the speed when Kuang Shiyue chased him before. Lu Jiang, he sneered and said, "This kid must be afraid of you to the extreme." Chu Xiu said in surprise, "Why do you say so?" Lu Jiang, he said, "This kid is using the Blue Dragon Society's Azure Dragon embodiment mystic art, but the real strength of this mystic art is in close combat. It is extremely fierce and powerful, but the backlash is not small. Therefore, only martial artists who have stepped into the real fire god refinement realm can cultivate it." Earlier, Xiao Chen's move was Return of the Azure Dragon. In an instant he could raise his speed to the limit. However, he now gave up the latter half of the attack, leaving only the first move so he can barely use it with his real pellet state cultivation. But look at him. Even if he manages to escape, he won't be able to withstand this power. Even if he doesn't die, he'll be heavily injured. Normal people wouldn't cultivate the escaping part of a secret technique. This kid is probably afraid that you'll kill him even in his dreams, so he doesn't learn anything else but the escaping secret technique first. Needless to say, Lu Jianghe's analysis was pretty good. Duan Tianlang really thought so back then. Duan Tianlang flattered Bu Tianan very clearly. He finally made Bu Tianan happy and gave him the Azure Dragon Incarnation secret technique, but he could not learn it. This made Duan Tianlang very depressed. However, because he was always worried about Chu Xiu's revenge, he gritted his teeth and took the initiative to learn this life-saving move. He didn't expect to really use it today. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and continued to chase after Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang's mystic art definitely couldn't last long. He didn't believe that Duan Tianlang could escape from his palm. However, after chasing for more than 10 miles, the traces became fainter and fainter. This made Chu Xiu a little surprised. Duan Tianlang is actually quite persistent. He can actually hold on until now. Chu Xiu did not plan to continue the chase because he could vaguely hear the sounds of a battle coming from the top of a tall mountain that resembled a long sword. The aura coming from it was very familiar to Chu Xiu. There was Fang Qishao, Lu Fengxian, Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. These 4 people are so coincidental that they all met at the same time? Chu Xiu directly gave up chasing Duan Tianlang, who had escaped somewhere, and went straight to the peak. The higher he went, the steeper it became. This peak seemed to be deliberately carved out by someone. It was in the shape of a long sword. When Chu Xiu climbed to the top, the 4 were fighting fiercely. Zhong Xian was holding the Ming King seal and fighting fiercely with Lu Fengxian. Although Lu Fengxian's strength was not weak, he was still promoted to the real pellet state later than Zhong Xian. Although he was born with divine power, he was not as strong as Zhong Xian's power foundation, so even if he had an unparalleled divine weapon in his hand, he was still suppressed. As for Fang Qishao, it was much more lively. He shouted while fighting with Zhang Qingzhen. It was unknown whether he was bursting out of his talkative attribute or he wanted to use verbal attacks to harass Zhang Qingzhen. Hey Zhang Qingzhen, you are too much. I found this place first. You, the dignified little celestial master, also want to snatch things? Damn, you are still using weapons? Your slaying evil is ranked 10th in the famous sword manual, and my shocking salamander is only 21st. Aren't you embarrassed to take it? If you have the ability, put down your weapon and let's have a fair fight. Bah? Shameless. Where are you going to fight? Do you think a Taoist can't find a woman, and you are jealous of my lower body's sexual happiness? Although Fang Qishao's side was shouting and looked very imposing, he was suppressed by Zhang Qingzhen very badly. The gap between the two could be said to be quite obvious. At this time, when Chu Xiu came, the 4 people fighting stopped and looked at Chu Xiu. Zhong Xian was expressionless, Zhang Qingzhen moved his eyebrows slightly, and Fang Qishao and Lu Fengxian were all happy. Fang Qishao laughed, "Ha! Brother Chu, you came at the right time, let's besiege this shameless Taoist together." To be able to say besieging so openly, it was unknown whether it was Fang Qishao who was shameless or Zhang Qingzhen who was shameless. Chu Xiu didn't make a move. He just walked over and asked, "What's the situation? Did you find the treasure?" Fang Qishao pointed at the mountain and said, "This is an ancient sword sect, a sword testing ground of the world sword sect. Of course, it's not the weapon but the swordsmen themselves. There are sword puppets guarding it. In the past, when the world sword sect was still around, as long as a swordsman passed the sword puppet trial, he would be able to obtain a treasure guarded by the sword puppet. With it, he would have the qualification to go down the mountain to roam the world, and that treasure is your trump card. These things are all recorded in the ancient books of our Sword King city. This is one of the many trial grounds of the world sword sect. There are 3 sword puppets on it that are intact and there must be something in their bodies. Previously we didn't have enough people, but now we do. Since they couldn't beat Zhang Qingjin and the others in a 2-on-2 fight, Fang Qixiao didn't have anything to be embarrassed about now. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "The two of you go kill the sword puppets and get the treasure. I'll block them." Fang Qixiao was stunned, and the way he looked at Chu Xiu changed. "Brother, why are you so arrogant now? That's Zhang Qingjin and Zhong Xian, not some Tom, Dick and Harry." But seeing Chu Xiu's serious face, Fang Qixiao didn't say much. He directly pulled Lu Fengxian and went to kill the sword puppets. Chu Xiu wasn't a person who liked to joke, especially on this occasion. He shouldn't be joking. But now that Chu Xiu said so, it meant that he had a certain degree of certainty to do so. Zhang Qingjin glanced at Chu Xiu with a slightly surprised gaze. "You don't think that after stepping into the real pellet state, only you, Chu Xiu, have improved and we are all standing still?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not, but I have confidence in myself." Zhang Qingjin smiled and said, "Coincidentally, I am also very confident in myself." As soon as he spoke, before Zhang Qingjin made a move, Zhong Xian had already blasted out a punch. The Buddha's power was mighty and shook the world. For people like Zhong Xian, his thinking was very simple. If you want to fight, then fight. He didn't care about being besieged. Moreover, recently in the Great Light Temple, he had more contact with Su Du after the two of them joined forces to kill Yuan Tianfang last time. Su Du was extremely respectful of Chu Xiu. This even made Zhong Xian, who had no intention of winning, want to see how strong Chu Xiu was now. Zhang Qingjin squinted his eyes, and he didn't make a move immediately. Instead, he wanted Zhong Xian to see how strong Chu Xiu was. Chu Xiu had his pride, and Zhang Qingjin also had his pride. In the past, in the Longhu list, Zhang Qingjin dominated the Longhu list for more than 10 years. In the entire younger generation, only Zhong Xian could compete with him. Although there was an additional Chu Xiu in the later stage, he still suppressed so many people. He was the first to step into the real pellet state, and he even condensed the Thunder Golden Core. But for a period of time, the Taoist master's mansion was closed, and he rarely made a move. On the other hand, Chu Xiu killed the powerhouse of the real fire spirit refinement state and became famous in the underworld. So in this way, the entire underworld was also divided into two factions. One faction thought that among the younger generation, the most terrifying was still Chu Xiu, who already had the strength to kill the real fire spirit refinement state powerhouse. But there was another faction of people who thought that Chu Xiu could kill the real fire spirit refinement state because of tricks. In terms of real strength, Little Celestial Master was better. These people were arguing there, but the people involved didn't care much. Whether it was for Chu Xiu or for Zhang Qingjin, when did they ever care about other people's opinions? In their hearts, there was only one idea in common, that was, they would never be weaker than others. At this time in the field, Chu Xiu had already fought with Zhong Xian. Both of them walked the path of incomparably violent fighting style, directly using brute force to kill, opening and closing with brute force. When Zhong Xian fought with Chu Xiu in the past, he was already weaker than Chu Xiu. But since the last time he stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm, he began to return to the Great Light Temple to train hard, and Su Si, Su Yun, and Su Du had taken turns to guide him. This kind of treatment was not available to ordinary Great Light Temple disciples. Especially Su Du, although this person didn't seem very reliable, his understanding of martial arts was unique, which benefited Zhong Xian a lot. At this time, when Zhong Xian attacked, endless Buddha's light appeared behind him, among which were the prison-guarding Wisdom King, the immovable Wisdom King, and dozens of Wisdom King phantoms hovered behind him. As Zhong Xian's palm fell, the Wisdom King was furious, slaying evil and subduing demons. Zhong Xian's move even had the scene of thousands of gods and Buddhas merging into one when Su Du faced Yuan Tianfang in the past. The only difference was that Zhong Xian only cultivated the power of the immovable Wisdom King. In an instant, endless blood light emerged in Chu Xiu's eyes. On the heavenly demon dance, blood qi and demonic qi surged. As the saber slashed down, endless twisted blood lines extended to the heavenly demon dance. This saber seemed to have flesh and blood as well as a soul. As the blood mist and demonic qi surged, it had already slashed toward Zhong Xian's Wisdom King seal. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.